being here. We'd like to mention that this is a regularly scheduled meeting. The date, time, and place of the meeting has been given to our media. It's been posted on the UNPC, the Utah Public Notice website, and also been posted on our building. We'll go ahead and do roll call. Councilman Abram here. Councilman White here. Councilman Baird here. Councilman Waite here. And Councilman Burdick here. To begin, we'll have a prayer by our city manager, and then if you would all follow me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for our opportunity to be here tonight. We thank Thee for this country we have to live in, and for the city we have to live in. We thank Thee for the service of those that provide essential services to the public. We ask that Thy blessing might be upon our fire and police departments and our public works, those that work with them. We ask that Thou would please bless the residents of the city, that they might be uplifted and guided by Thee. We ask that the council might be blessed, that it might be able to make the right decisions, that might be guided for the benefit and advancement of the city. We ask that Thou would please help us in all that we do. We say this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. First item of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting. Are there any amendments or corrections? Page 1, page 2, page 3, and page 4. Seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Motion by Councilman White.
Second there.
Second by Councilman Waite. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Minutes are approved. We have, at the beginning of each meeting, we have a public comment period. I sound like a broken record every time I say it. Anybody that has a comment or would like to address the council, they can come up and state your name if you would, and you'll have up to 3 minutes. So.
Oh, I'm Doug Murray. Appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to come up here tonight. I got like a little bit of a problem. The Roosevelt City really doesn't have a noise ordinance. Duchesne County, I believe, does. Duchesne City does. I believe Fowler City, from what I'm understanding, does. A couple of reasons why I'd like one is the semis run behind Maverick on 17th West Highway 40, and they run all night long. They won't do anything to the semis to shut them down because it's on private property. Another one is they empty the dumpsters around town early in the morning. I've got record of the times when they do it. I don't have a problem. I can be flexible and reasonable, but at 4:30 on a Saturday, to me, that isn't really reasonable. I did look at the contract, and there's some discrepancy, or maybe I just don't know how to understand it on the contract. But they say that the garbage cans have to be placed out by 6 a.m. on the day the garbage will be collected. Does that mean that they don't dump before 6 a.m.? Or is that in the contract? Because if I put the garbage can out at 6, they dump at 5, they miss me. So if their contract comes due next year, we probably should put something in there to stipulate the time. Another thing is in Article 7 of their deal, it says in performing the services as provided herein, the contractor agrees employees will make little noise and disturbance as possible. I've addressed it with several of the city councilmen and also with Ken himself, and that's just I'd like to see something done, to be honest with you, at least a noise ordinance if anything. But I don't think that's too much to ask. I did contact Basin White Dumpsters. They are not allowed to dump before 6 a.m. in Duchesne City. So I mean, that's reasonable in my opinion.
So with, I guess it doesn't matter, is it a small,
Well, it doesn't just say in the contract,
Right.
it says 6 o'clock in the morning.
right?
And what I'm doing is I'm hearing the dumpsters. And it's anywhere from 4:30, and it's not that they can't do it later, because like on November 7th, it was at 7 o'clock in the morning. October 20th, 4:30 in the morning. October 27th, 5:40. November 2nd, 4:40. I mean, why am I living in Roosevelt City, paying higher money in taxes, and living in the city, it's supposed to look after their, people in the city, and it seems like I'm just getting brushed to the side. I'm not gonna go away.
Do we have anything in the contract?
I got a copy of the contract if you
You have a
like.
copy of the contract, I've seen the contract, I don't believe it has any specific times restrictions in the contract. There are contracts that have, and we have had some construction contracts that have restricted, time of construction work. Our contract on, 8 South, when we do it, it's a 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. kind of contract. I'm not aware that this contract has a specific time, and if other cities do, we could consider that, but I think there's still a year, at least a year
The
left on
contract
that
comes
contract.
through December 31st of 2019. And I think KK does a good job as far as garbage collection. I don't have a problem, but my problem is getting woke up, wakes up my whole family. And I'm not the only one. It happens behind L&L when they dump the trash cans there. Everybody around there has the same beef. If I have to go out and get signatures to put an ordinance in place, I'm willing to do that.
Well, to me, I hate to overregulate, but we can do, to create ordinances, does that make sense? But if we could modify a contract, but I would like to do what you just said, and that is look at some of the other cities and see what they're doing, and then do something
We can
similar.
evaluate that when the contract comes. We usually will evaluate contracts about 6 months before they expire, which we hope to. Where we've extended that one, the contract had an extension period. It's been extended. So I think the end of next year, so it'd start in June, July, starting to make that discussion. So, we could obviously look at it. I'm not sure what the, business model is. And so some of that, that would be requiring some of input from the contractor. So
It's gotta be it's gotta
gotta
work for everyone.
Yeah, and I said 6 o'clock is reasonable. I'm not saying, hey, 37, I'm willing to work. But I mean, even on a Saturday at 4:30 in the morning, if there's not noise ordinance, just give me a guy's address and I'll come honk the horn and turn your house all morning. What are they gonna do to me on a public street? You can't do anything to me according to what Roosevelt City has.
Well, let's take a look at that, and I'd like to see something done, start the ball rolling on something. But it's gotta work for everybody, it definitely has to work for everybody, so, but we do appreciate you coming in and voicing your concern.
What kind of time frame don't we check that?
That's a good question.
why don't you check back with me, around June as we start the
So for the
discussion.
next 6 or 7 months.
I would like to
But
see
that's
something.
the contract side of things. Do you want to do the contract?
No, they're not gonna modify it. Can we get a city ordinance or like noise pollution?
Go ahead.
I would like to see an ordinance get put in place for noise, because, I mean, this is a city, the majority of our city, don't work at K&K. K&K does a great service for us, but I'd like to see the residents of our city happy, and that's who we serve, and that's who I represent, and who hired me, so I feel like the majority of our city would like a sound ordinance in place.
And if you look at the past minutes of the records, I went through them, this is the first time that there's been a noise ordinance issue brought up among the councilmen. I mean, this going 10, 20 years ago still. And why don't we have one with other cities around us too?
There's a couple of things on noise ordinances. We have a nuisance ordinance, so if you showed up and honked your horn, that could be a nuisance, and just like dogs and some other things. There was a nuisance as far as a repetitive task, and I'd have to look at a specific nuisance ordinance. But noise, the interesting thing about noise is how you track and record the decibel differences, and being able to record those decibels, and being able to cite and record it at a time You can do a traffic violation or speeding, so because you have a radar detect.
One thing that I want to do, because we don't want to get into a deep discussion on this, because it is a comment period.
Yeah.
But what we will do is, I think it would be appropriate to put that on our next council meeting, the discussion of a noise ordinance, and then we can discuss what we think we ought to see, and we can go through the parameters of that.
Like I said, if I have to, I can go beat the doors and get the signatures.
Well, what I think would be helpful is if you'll just get on the next council meeting and put that on as the agenda item, and then we'll have more time to discuss it, and then we can talk about that.
That'll work.
Can I go through this one? Sure. So when you first stated your concerns, you said trucks also, right?
Yes.
Down the road.
Semis, they actually don't drive, they park behind Maverick on 17th West Highway 40, and they will run all night long. It's more prevalent in the wintertime, but, I've addressed Roosevelt City Police Department, said, hey, these guys are running all the time. A couple of neighbors have said the same thing, and it keeps you up all night. But there's not a noise ordinance in Roosevelt, and I can't really go approach the vehicles because it's on private property according to what the police department has stated. But it's also not a truck stop either.
Are they renting back there, Kevin?
I don't believe so. I think they're just parking.
I think we discussed this, and then we look at what's reasonable and what's not reasonable to try to deal with that. There has been other times that there has been noise issues, and some of those have been able to be taken care of with other ordinances. But I think that would be the most appropriate thing to do, is get on the next council agenda, put that in there, and we'll have time to discuss it.
Okay, I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yes.
Say up here on this hill here, when they come around and clean it, we pick up. We hardly ever hear that truck, and I don't know, it may be a difference in trucks. It could be the driver is noisy.
I'm wondering if I think it has to do more with the metal cans and
Well,
the
there's
big.
the big city one that's out here right
here.
kind of on their side of the
It's
house,
like up about twice, while then you hear it.
but you don't hear it.
Not really,
Yeah.
but the cans, so you hardly even know it. You can hear just the air brake if it's right in front of your house, but
Yeah.
they do a real good job on that, but I don't know how the trucks are.
Yeah.
Whether they're all the same or not.
They do come early, our townhomes down there.
Hal, are you,
Yeah,
looking to make a comment?
Good morning, buddy.
All right, you're up next. Go for it.
Okay, I'm Hal Huff, I live on 8 South. Some of you know me, some of you know of me, maybe some of you wish you did, I don't know. Anyway, our neighbors had a house fire last Wednesday. And my question is, why did a fire truck go over to 5th East to come to 260 East on 8 South?
Unless they were lost, I have no idea.
Well, I come from a manufacturing background, and you got logistics, how you move product. Well, services move the same way, so I would come down State Street to 8 South and come 2.5 blocks east, and I've been to fire, but looks to me that maybe I lost about 5 minutes of firefighting time. So anyway, I appreciate these guys. I'm not a firefighter, so I'm not trying to be on somebody else's territory, but it seems to me that they lost a little time in fighting a fire.
Gotcha.
But the
Well, we can,
good thing is, no lives are lost, and we can redo the house. But anyway, I appreciate you here.
Can I make a comment? Sir, I was a volunteer fireman for Roosevelt City for 25 years.
Okay,
And getting a fire
can
call,
you state your name,
my name's Steve Gack.
Steve?
I was a firefighter for 25 years. And when dispatch calls you in, sometimes they get the mumble jumble and the addresses are confusing. There's many a times that we went to the wrong place. And, we do the best we can. It's a volunteer fire department that we have. And they do the best they can. And sometimes they get mixed up and it's just an address. And it used to be in the good old days, it was who lived by Joe Summerall. You knew exactly where to go. And nowadays, you've got Poco Acres, 125 Poco Acres, 760 Sunset Drive. It's confusing. And I was chewed out many a times for being late. But when there's a fire, the person that's there, it's forever. But for the firefighters, it's as fast as you can go, you know, and you're watching your house burn down. I mean, that's just the way
Well, you know,
it is.
that's just what I saw.
Yeah, I know
Like
you
I
see
say,
that.
I'm not a firefighter, I'm just saying that, to me, it was a better way to get there.
Well,
But then I wasn't on a radio either,
yeah.
and I appreciate what you did.
So anyway,
Rebecca Pittman.
Probably
No, I have no idea, but I'm glad you're here.
both crazy all day. My name is Rebecca Pittman, and I just wanted to find out what is the city's procedure for handling I want to be very careful in the words that I choose. It's regarding the story on the news from last night with the sexting and how the police investigation was handled and things like that. You know, obviously you wouldn't be over when it goes to the county attorney's office, but he does serve at the pleasure of the mayor and the city council. So what is the process, the pathway that's in place to handle situations like this? What will be done? What will be looked into?
I don't, has any of the council had any thought on that? I had my own thoughts on that, but has any of the council?
And from what I read on KSL, the state attorney general will be looking into it. Whether or not we will do more or not, I don't know, but that's as far as I know what will be done going forward.
Well, and I guess as a citizen, I'm asking that as a council and as the mayor that you do more than that, because that is addressing the crimes that were perpetrated. But there was definite neglect. I called Rick several times, and he must not dog me as much as he dogs the reporter, but he did dog me a while, but I got him. But I couldn't ever do a grandma request because it was still an ongoing investigation. And I was told that the phones were confiscated and sent to the crime lab after Rick had told me that they had done a conflict of interest, and so it had been transferred to a different county attorney's office. So that information was not correct, or it didn't happen, or like he thought it would, or something to that effect. But as a citizen, to see my police chief ducking out the back, and I'm supposed to trust that he has my best interests at heart and is protecting the community, that was an absolute embarrassment. And if I neglected my duties at my work that way, there would be some repercussions.
Right, what I think Councilman White is alluding to, and something that I would like, me personally, now has to be a council decision, but I would like to see an investigation, not only by the Attorney General's office, but also by another department. And that's something that we would talk about, and we'll talk about as it comes to personnel and competency. We'll do that in closed session. But those are some of my feelings, is that we need to have an investigation on our procedures here.
Okay, so how, sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm all for, we're talking as a council about this, obviously, where it's competency, we'll be doing that behind, in closed session, but I think it's definitely something we need to discuss as a council.
Because you gotta instill that trust back in the community,
Yeah,
because
sure.
a lot was lost when that ran out the door, along with the chief, so.
Agreed.
I appreciate you looking into that. Because obviously it's a closed door session when you do the personnel issues, how will the public know that something is being done?
So if we come to a decision to do something, that will be done in open session.
Okay.
So we'll discuss what needs to be done in closed session, and as far as the competency and those types of things. And then in open session, we'll make a decision as to whether we do an investigation or whatnot.
During the open session, will you be able to answer whether or not you've addressed it in closed session? You don't need to tell us what you
Correct.
discussed, but will you be able to discuss whether or not it's been discussed?
Correct.
Yes, you will.
And so,
Any decision that we make, or you cannot make a decision or vote on a decision in closed session. All of this.
No, I
And so
understand that. We
you'll-
just want to know that it's being discussed and not being,
Correct,
tabled.
Yeah.
So we want to see it go forward.
absolutely. And we want to gain your trust too, as elected officials, to make sure that we're doing the right thing. So.
because he made you guys look at it too.
Sorry.
Are you serious?
Just saying. Just saying, but I appreciate it. I know it's not an easy position that you're in, and those aren't easy discussions to have with anybody, but, not just that behavior, but how the investigation was conducted, because it does make you call into question other cases, are things being asked to not be a priority because there is a conflict of interest, and, those are things that you guys have worked really
Well-
hard with the whole transparency thing to debunk.
And in that situation, there should have been a different prosecuting attorney or attorney in.
From the start, he should have never even seen any of the evidence.
Correct. And we know that. That's something that we don't handle personally, but we will do what we can.
Right.
What we have the ability to do.
But would it be appropriate for a police chief not to turn that information over to a county attorney that's personally involved?
Right.
So, there's just multi-level. So who would you get to investigate?
I'll just say something there.
Yeah.
I would use real caution here. We don't have any idea. We saw it just like you saw it.
Right, and so you would need an
We should
investigation.
not be discussing this.
And that's what I'm saying. I think it's fine out and discuss in open meeting. As far as an investigation, people do it all the time. Other cities have investigations go on. And usually what you do is you get a third party, somebody from the city or somebody that is unaffiliated with our town or our area, and those would be the ones to do the investigation so that it's objective.
Thank you, appreciate it.
One item, just a clarification, when there is a conflict of interest with an attorney, we have the hired attorney firm, when they do have a conflict, when they clear that conflict, there is some restrictions on where that can go. So it has to be either seen by an adjacent county. So each of those counties would be contacted and asked if they would take it on and review the case. And one thing that wasn't shown in there is the length of time that some of that took to find one that would take that. The Attorney General's office is one of last resort, because they won't take it unless you've exhausted other counties. When we touch a certain number of counties, some can do it, some can't do it. And so there's some time that does take that, and that wasn't including the article. So some of the length of time, there is some length of time. Just understand that an article is as good as some information they have, and some information is about minors, and that information wasn't able to be released.
And that was
I think it's
redacted, and that was appropriate and legal.
And some of those things, if there was some of the redacted information at the table, I think we would understand a little of this case differently than we might on its surface. So I would be cautious, I think, looking into things. We look into accusations of city employees.
To me, that's why, and I'm gonna, because for sake of time, we'll get moving, but that's why we let the investigation happen, and that didn't take what I'm supposed to be.
Just one quick comment. Problem is, during that length of time that investigation is going, and behind the scenes, obviously, the citizens don't have a lot of confidence in our police force,
Sure.
or the justice system. So it does need to take place soon.
And we've seen things can happen in 3 days in our city. So we know that due diligence can be done quickly.
We decided to slow that down. Now, any others?
I would just like to say,
Would you,
Keith Winterton,
yes, Keith, sorry.
I'm just standing behind the chief. Have you ever had anybody walk in and accuse you of something with a camera and a tape recorder and everything running? It's intimidating, and you don't know. A lot of
That's
times
his job, to answer the tough questions, so that's what he's paid for.
And that is, I thought, was way out of place for them to come out here like that. And it should have been more.
Sure.
uh,
Well, there's a lot of,
Mayor, may I speak for a minute?
sure,
He's been cautioned and told by council to not speak about these things also, and that's been the same with the city council. There's been a lot of things talked about, but nobody really knows, and so that was his counsel too, that he shouldn't be speaking about things. And so, that's,
Then it would be appropriate to convey that message instead of.
they knew that, they knew that. They're just creating a big story, but they knew that they shouldn't be talking about it open, because there's minors involved. That's been the biggest stymie of the whole thing, and just some of the ways it was handled. But it's not something that we've looked on lightly, but we've been cautioned not to talk about it, so.
and ultimately, all those things will be, I mean, that's why, before we jump to any conclusions, it's good to get the facts, and the facts will be done by the investigation if that's what we decide to do, and then the proper steps can be taken. So, anybody else? All right, our 15 minutes is up. We'll move on to our first public hearing. It's the CDBG. Entertain a motion to move into public hearing?
There's no.
No? All right, we'll just consider ourselves in public hearing. Do you want,
I think you're on.
I'm the one that gets to
Well,
explain what
you
this is.
can, if you'll read that section, I think, the CDBG,
Right.
they are so specific in everything they require. It's a lot of tough things.
Just
So
so,
read that and then I'll review kind of
okay,
some of those things, but it is such a strict kind of money that, anyway.
so the purpose of the public hearing is to provide citizens with pertinent information about the Community Development Block Grant Program and to allow for discussion of possible applications for the 2020 funding cycle. And so this has to do with the projects that we would want,
Coming out. So we
Coming
apply
out.
throughout the next 6 months. And
which we have, what, 3, I think? It was explained that the grant money must be spent on projects benefiting primarily low and moderate income persons. UBAG, which is Roosevelt City, in which Roosevelt City is a member, is expecting to receive approximately 762, I'm guessing that's 1,696 in this program, new program year, of which 250,000 will be available to apply for. All eligible activities that can be accomplished under this program are identified in the CDBG Application Policies and Procedures Manual, and interested persons can review it at any time. So I'll read several of the eligible activities listed, including examples such as construction of public works and facilities, water and sewer lines, fire stations, acquisitions of real property, provisions of public services such as food banks or homeless shelters. I have also indicated that in the past, Roosevelt City has received funding for, and I have indicated that, by the way, one of the projects that we're currently doing that we utilize these funds is the 800 South project. It was for culinary water line and storm drain, restroom facilities at the old park and Constitution Park, architectural work on the Crossroads Center, funds to demolish buildings on Main Street, playground equipment at the old park, Central Park, and Skate Park. The city has handed out its capital investment plan as part of the regional consolidation plan. This list shows which projects the city has identified as being needed in the community. So we'd like to ask anyone with questions or comments or suggestions during this hearing. Again, please identify yourself by name. And before you speak, the recorder will include your names in the minutes, and we'd like to be specific. We'd like to specifically respond to your questions and suggestions during the hearing. So we'll go ahead and.
perfect. Then we have a few projects that we have identified, just to kind of give ideas. There have been some listed. Some of the ones we've looked at, we have some sidewalk and street lighting on 5th East between Lagoon Street and 8th South that we see as a potential need for. We have sewer lines in the northeast that we're looking for and potentially look at. And there's storm drain items in Fifth East, Fifth West area, coming down towards, the junior high. So those are the three that staff is kind of brainstorming, so what areas, and we're looking for public input. What areas are low to moderate income? We have to take a survey out, and those residents have to actually answer that they're low to moderate income. We have to identify at least a certain percentage of those identified have to actually fill out the survey. So we can't have people say, oh, no, I don't want to fill that out. We got to find an area that they're willing to fill it out, willing to be low to moderate income and tell us that. And then it is a competitive bid process. And so for the 250,000, it's a lot of work to go through. But if there is a project, we'd like to investigate pursuing it. And if the public has certain interest, we'd like to. But those are the three that we've kind of identified as from staff side, saying, well, these are certain areas that we have a need. But really, this point is opening up to any idea.
So with that, are there any questions about CDBG funds and how they work? And also, do you have any suggestions of projects where we could potentially utilize those funds?
So it has to be projects that would benefit low to moderate income.
Correct.
So,
And that has to be identified. That has to
so
be.
how do you, because you mentioned tearing down old businesses on Main Street, and I think that was part of why Carl's Jr. didn't come in, because they had an exorbitant cost that they wanted the city to take care of. But how would that fit into benefiting low to moderate income?
I don't think
They have a different one.
Yeah.
But we're gonna get into the reason why Carl's Jr. If you want, you can visit with me later on that one, if you want the details there. But it has
Carl's
to
Jr. had 2 spots.
and they chose a different spot over ours at this point in time. But it does have to be low to moderate income. At certain times in our bus cycles, we may qualify as citywide. So those might have happened when we were qualified citywide. And during boom cycles, those are a lot less available spots. So some of that varies based on what the economy is doing. So yeah, that's why some are citywide ones and some are local. Yeah.
But if you'll come to our economic development committee next week and every month thereafter, we'll talk about those areas like.
I think you guys are fabulous on that one. Kudos to you.
On which one?
On saying, no way, we're not paying your bill.
Oh, yeah. But, so any suggestions, any thoughts as to where those funds may be utilized other than what our city manager has proposed?
In the past, about,
Please.
Stephen Timothy. In about 2005, it was discussed paving down around where I live with CDBG funds. We've since had roto mill that was then chip sealed. And that's 100 times better than dirt, but it's only part of the road still. And I'd like to see that continue to the north. To finish that road out. A lot of us that live down there travel to the north to 400 south before we get over on 500 east. We have a little better view than if you were to do that on 500 south. Also, looking at our master plan, current master plan, the width of the road doesn't fit that master plan. The width that was roto milled, and so it is narrow and stuff. So I'd like to see that as part of it too. To widen out to match our master plan and just finish and improve that area. And I think that it would fit with low to moderate income. They're all smaller homes, around 1,700 square foot homes. So I think that would be a good area to look at, especially since it was something that was in the past they had looked at it. And planned on using that as a project.
Thanks, Steve. That just, and I don't mean to detract from from that suggestion. But, if I'm thinking, about areas that really need some paving in low income areas, it would be 600 North. And, I don't know, to me, that would be a good area because that is a, you know, you have all the apartments there, that would easily be, something that could qualify. And even if, I know it's only 250,000, but if we had 250,000 that we could go to CID with, we could get that done without.
The nice thing with 600 North and some of those, they are in our CIP funding that we have currently. And I think we're waiting until spring to work on them. So we'll come to that one earlier.
Then we can get funds for this one.
So at this point, it's potential. They do evaluate it based on the number. So there is a few that can benefit by this one. We may take with Steve and try to quantify the amount. And so anyway, it's great suggestion on it to our potentials. So
Yes, Daniel.
So I'm Daniel Walkley, and I'd sign that because that's where I'm living right now. So. Daniel Walkley, sorry. I'm not very educated on roads, so I know that on 300 North, 300 East, down by the trailers, on the creek, those spur roads are not city responsibility, correct, into the trailer park area where all those trailers are at?
those are private roads inside the trailer park, the cul-de-sacs.
Yeah.
They're private roads, so they're not.
That's what I figured, yeah. They're in bad shape.
They're in horrible shape. It's in horrible shape, but we don't own them.
No, that's good. Yeah, sounds good.
What about those roads, sorry, Rebecca, that he's talking about down there by the, things, I've noticed, one of the residents of our city that is in a wheelchair, she's on her phone a lot, and there's no sidewalks there. And so she's out in the road and coming to and from Centennial, that gets pretty busy.
And that's up in, on the north end of town now.
That's on the
I can throw out here, so.
Well, that's fine, just give me an
As
approximate. Tell me
you're
where.
going from my church building down to Centennial.
Okay, that's on
So-
southeast. So that is the one that we had as our first one from a staff recommendation, is the sidewalks from Lagoon Street, which is where the church is.
Yes.
From Lagoon Street to 8 South, which would connect into where we actually widen and have sidewalks. Street lighting and sidewalks along that is our number one staff recommendation if we have one. But, so yes, thank you. I appreciate you. Stand for recognition. I like her.
Any others? Seeing none, we'll move forward with the next public hearing. And this has to do with ordinance 2018-419. This is the Wheels annexation. Do we need Mr. Wills to address this? I think he's done that several times.
Yeah, we've been through this super time with you.
Yep. So this is an ordinance amending the Roosevelt City zoning ordinance. The purpose is to give a Roosevelt City zone designation to the property proposed for annexation to the Roosevelt City. So this will be the Wills.
So this is, the first one is to accept the annexation. The second one is to specify the zoning designation.
Just take them individually.
Okay. So are there any, where we'll consider ourselves in the public hearing, are there any comments, concerns about annexing this piece of property?
But that's not your first one. Your first one is the zoning.
Carol?
No, we have to annex it before we can zone. Proceed as well.
But I noticed the
So, and I'll make a correction, it's ordinance 2018-420 is to annex in. Are there any questions or comments, concerns in regards to that annexation? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve that ordinance.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Councilman White and second by Councilman Labrum. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Now we'll move on to the next public hearing, which is ordinance 2018-419. So those were just a little bit backwards, and this will be to give a zoning to that annexed piece. And the proposed zone is an RR1, if I'm understanding correctly. Is that what you understood, Mr. Wills? We'll go ahead and consider ourselves in public hearing for that. Are there any questions, concerns, or comments pertaining to ordinance 2018-419?
I know we're already past the annexation, but did you say that the green on this was, what was being annexed in, or just that?
Oh, just the one
Or just the one, just that
Yeah.
parcel there?
Yeah, this map isn't actually accurate, so, but it's just the one parcel.
It's a 1 acre piece.
So one.
Any other questions? If seeing none, we'll go ahead and consider ourselves back in the regular
We
meeting.
need to have it passed.
Yeah, and
Oh,
we'll go ahead and entertain a motion to pass ordinance 2018-419.
So moved.
Seconded.
Motion by Councilman Wade and second by Councilman Burdick. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Last one. Okay, this is the big one. Ordinance 2018-421, this is Title 17. We've gone through. This has to do with some land uses. This ordinance 2018-421 will revise Title 17-01 through 17-15-020 of the Roosevelt City Code. This will bring our city code up to date with what is being done in the city. And we'll go ahead and consider ourselves in the public hearing for this ordinance, and would ask if there are any questions, concerns with the ordinance. You got it pulled up?
I do have, I have the ordinance redlined through, so we can go page by page. There is 120 pages, almost 119 pages. It's, generally speaking, there are a few adjustments to this. So there is a lot of cleanup. We have a lot of definitions that we don't use in the code. And so those are being removed because we're not using that definition. So to define it in the definitions and then not to use it is ineffective and confusing. There are a few pieces of it that are cleanup, removing things that aren't applicable anymore. Some of them are.
Sorry, go ahead.
Some of it is amending the 30% rule that we have, puts a 30%, takes out the 30% of the house, but keeps the 50% of the lot for accessory buildings. Further defines a few of those pieces. So anyway, we can go through as much detail as you would like. Hopefully, we have had it posted with our public meeting notice. So it has been out there. It also has been given to the council a few weeks ago in great detail. The attorney's been through it. And some of that the attorney's gone through a lot of the different pieces of it. They've been one of those that primarily, there's some pieces that are in the wrong title. So you look at this one, a nuisance abatement is actually in Title 17, but it really belongs in Title 18 with where it's at. Just to go through a few of these, some of it's just removing some of those because of update city code. We've had this code a long time, and some of it has just become unrelevant. So a lot of these are definitions that we don't then use. So anyway, in whatever detail or questions you have, I'm happy to go through any of those specifics with you if you'd like. We'll take it however you like.
Before we ask for comments, one thing I'd like to mention too is when we have an agenda, we've had the agenda out by a week prior to our council meeting, and that's actually posted on the Utah Public Notice website as stated at the beginning of the meeting. Along with that agenda is the packet to the agenda now, so that as you are interested in looking through these types of things, you can see those there and see what the council's been looking at as well. So as we come to these public hearings, if you want to look at them prior to, you have the ability to. I just want to make sure everybody knows that. Any questions or
I have
comments?
a quick question now. I wasn't able to review it. I apologize, however, I'll lengthen. What changes are there to off-street parking? I saw that on there.
Good question.
Off-street parking is a definition. Parking. Doing something there. I'm not even sure I saw much to it. Can you go back to the, yeah, that document. Not the first one. There you go. I'll move it. No, the one next to it. This one here. Yep. Put the top there. Oh,
Oh, 1706.
6. So the only change, the little changes here in the wholesale establishments is determined by conditional use, taking out, requiring it by conditional use, and just saying it either is or it isn't allowed. And it says this one is, no fewer than one space, for every 2 employees. That's that one. Shipping containers and other groups as listed as determined by conditional use has been removed. Common facility, it's actually adding it here and then telling what it is, and we've taken out the summary language and left the rest. And all other uses not listed above, that's a general one, and so it's been generalized throughout the code rather than some specific instances of the code. Does that answer your question on that one?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Pete.
I did bring up a concern in planning and zoning, and it was corrected, and that was just the changing of commission to board, and that was fixed in the definitions. State law requires to have a planning commission, so I just felt it needed to match with that state law.
And board was consistent through other code items, and so we did add particular to indicating that the planning commission is defined as the planning commission, planning board is defined as planning commission.
And then the other concern was the process of this. Talked to David Church today. I also emailed Meg Ryan with, they're both with Utah League of Cities and Towns. Meg Ryan's over planning and zoning. Both of them told me that we should have had a public hearing at planning and zoning first, so you guys could get a recommendation from the planning commission before doing any changes to land use ordinances. The state or land use regulations in chapter 10-9A of the state code, under the definitions, a land use regulation in 29B is where the definition is. It said includes the adoption or amendment of a zoning map or the text of the zoning code. And so I felt this should have been done prior with planning and zoning. And when I brought things up, apparently I was the only one that got an email being made aware of this. I didn't know I was supposed to pass it on to the other planning and zoning members. So when I brought it up, none of them had any idea what was going on. I just feel we need to utilize the boards that we have, especially when it's a board that the state says we're supposed to have.
And that's just my concern with this, is we're not going about the proper procedures in making these amendments to this zoning code.
Thanks, Steve. And Steve did mention that to me today. I found out about that today. I did get in contact with our city attorney and run that by him to make sure, you know, how he interpreted that, to see if we were still in compliance. He felt 100% confident to move forward with it. So we can do that. If it is contested though, and you are correct, it could be, what would be the term, redacted, or it would be overturned, possibly. And so, as city council and a municipality, it's wise for us to go with our attorney's suggestion. He is our legal counsel, but duly noted, and I appreciate you doing the homework. If we'd have had more time, if I'd have had more time, we'd have looked into it much further. But again, I contacted him right before the meeting to see what his feelings were with that, and to make sure that if we needed to hold off, we'd hold off. And I told him that. He said he felt comfortable with moving forward. So we will, and then if we need to do something different, or find out something different, we can fix that at that time. Any other questions or concerns? I have a few, sorry, now I need to drive this meeting out. And they're some of them are fairly simple, and just 17.01.150. There's a grammatical error in license. I know. But,
I found a few of those too, but I talked to Ryan and he said the copy I was looking at had been fixed.
We had our expert in grammar go through it after, in the actual code that's published, it should be in some of the preliminary ones, some of that wasn't, but let's look at 17, and we should be able to change grammatical items to keep content. 17, sorry.
It was there, 1701.
Yeah. I'm just pulling up the most, this one has the detail of the red line. This one doesn't have all the red line detail, but this has the finalized, so I apologize. Let's see if that one. So it would read, any license or permit which conflict with the provisions of this title may be null and void at the discretion of the individual or office which issued the permit or license by action of the Roosevelt City Council. Is that how you want it worded?
Yeah, it was just a spelling error, and it was the first license. So
this one is fixed, that one.
The 17.140, and I should have gotten with you. I didn't. 17.140. And for all of you that are watching, this was a booger of a ordinance.
We put it off as long as we could.
Yeah. And so if there's a few mistakes or a few things, just understand that it was large.
So at this point, we've broken it up into two parts, 17, 140.
Okay, so are we not
would be in part 2, and this is, we end at 17, 15, 30 is where we're ending at part 1.
Okay.
So we, anything beyond there, we would like to have your comments as we enter into phase 2.
All right, and we'll talk about ones that pertain to this. So 17.13.040.
17.13.040. Repealed. So that one's been removed.
Right, and that's that had to do with the planning and zoning. So can we read what was there? And that had to do with the planning and zoning commission
Planning and zoning commission or the building inspector, when authorized by the planning and zoning commission, shall determine whether the proposed architecture and site development plans submitted are consistent with this chapter and with the general objectives of this title, and shall give or withhold approval accordingly. Denial of approval of a building by the building inspector may be appealed to the planning and zoning commission, and denial by planning and zoning commission may be appealed to the city council as provided. So our appeal process is defined elsewhere. So our appeal process is defined elsewhere. We have tried to remove the when authorized by planning and zoning commission, because it's somewhat arbitrary in saying, well, is it or isn't it? So we've removed those kind of items, saying it either is or isn't.
So and that's the question that I had. So up to this point, when somebody has a site plan or building built, does that come before planning and zoning?
Site plan comes before planning and zoning.
Okay, and will that still happen?
That still happens.
Even,
So the building inspector not, so this is saying the building approval could be given to the building inspector for that. Well, we don't do that. And so why have the code allow for something we don't do? So that site plan is still going to come to planning. The approval of this is that they can approve the building inspector to do this, which we don't have the building inspector do. So we've removed that the planning and zoning could have somebody else do it.
the other question was the variance committee, but that's another issue, so we can talk about that at another time. And then the other two things that I have as concerns would be in next month.
Well, let's not call it next month, but it will be in the next part.
Part B.
Part B.
The sequel.
The sequel. So we have broken this up. It is almost 200 pages when you get all of it. So there is a lot, and but we have broken it into sections. So there's all of it.
Go ahead.
So the rule or ordinance that basically requires that accessory buildings be less than 30% of the size square foot of your home. Is that in this?
That is in 1704-100.
1704-100.
And that was just removed, and then we let the other ordinance that was in place in the other chapter.
Yeah, so the other chapters would specify that exterior buildings can't be based on the size of the property, not based on the primary residence. And there would be I could find it, 17, I'm not sure which one else it has, but the other one specifies by zoning area and says in a R1 it can be this size, in R16 it can be this size, and in R120 it can be this size. So it specifies it by zone rather than just by the size of the house. If you have a 40-acre parcel but have a small ramshackle house, to be able to build a small garage, 30% of your house doesn't make as much sense as you can't build it to more than, I think it's 25% of the property or something like that. At that point, it defines it by property size, not by that.
I agree with that idea. I think it needs to be done by zoning because, like you said, there's bigger parcels where you have a small house and you need a big building for your business or other things like that. I think in the future we need to address this, for neighborhoods where you have like R110, or whatever the R1, R120, R110, R16. So we need to address the accessory building sizes just to make sure that they're not detrimental to the value of homes in the neighborhood. So
I agree. This is a step in that direction. Obviously, we're looking for substantive progress, but not everything's going to be already perfect in it. But we agree this makes a progress. But taking that, those two ordinances conflicted, and so we're removing the conflict and saying, let's keep it this way. And then as we go to master planning through some of those items, those kind of things can be looked at. And CCNRs, we ask for certain things like that. So
Okay.
policy-wise, we're addressing some of that by requiring CCNRs.
Any other further comments? Seeing none, would entertain a motion to approve. I'll move to approve. Councilman Burdick, and second by Councilman White. And we'll do a roll call on this one just to be safe.
Yay.
Councilman Labram's a yay.
Yay.
Councilman White, yay. Yay. Yay.
All right.
That's unanimous. Motion passes. All right. We're really cruising now. On to our next agenda item, we have Mr. Betts here with us. Seeking approval for a variance, I believe.
For a variance, and then, yeah, just looking to add the additional building on our piece of property. And we've talked to Mr. Bird about putting a building on a 5-foot property line instead of a 10-foot property line, and talked about doing some surveying. I know he talked to you today. I wasn't there, but he has a little bit of hard time hearing, so I'm speaking for him here.
Tell us your name.
Aaron.
I know your name, but
Yeah.
for everyone else.
Okay.
Yeah, so from what I understand, the normal setback for a building is 10 feet, and the vets are looking for a 5-foot setback because of the size of their lot and being able to move their vehicles.
Yeah,
From
we just
the
want
front
to be
to
able
the
to
back.
squeeze like our snow plows through there, and then basically, instead of wasting that space that's just gonna grow weeds, you know, if we can set the building there, it'd make the property a lot cleaner.
And I happen to be the adjacent property owner. And I'm okay with the setback. My only question was to make sure that we knew where the property line was, so that as that building is built, we don't have any property issues. So my suggestion is that we would split the bill to have a survey done. I know today, speaking with Wade, he said that time is of the essence, wanting to get this built as soon as possible.
Yeah.
I'm okay with just sticking it in if we can find the surveyor that'll do that. It's not very costly. And if we can find somebody fairly quick to do that, I'm 100% okay with that as long as that happens.
Even when you talk about it, you as the property owner, not you as the.
Correct, yeah.
I just clarifying.
Yeah, as the property owner.
Yeah.
As the mayor, I recuse myself, but as the adjacent property owner, that I'm fine with the proposal as long as we know where that property line is, and happy to show the cost in that. And I think just thinking about it after we had our conversation, I think we can get somebody there pretty quick. There's several people that could potentially do that, so.
Yeah, we would like to get on it as quick as possible to pour cement, to where we're not having bad cement problems with the freezing temperatures coming.
Any questions from the council?
That is on the west side then of your
Yes.
property?
Yeah, on the northwest corner.
Right.
And the only thing different from what we have than 10-foot offset from 5 is what you're requesting.
5 foot on the west side. We would still do the 10 foot on the north side because there's power lines there, and we've got with Moon Lake, and they said that in order to do that, that's what we would need to do. So.
And it has been on the planning zoning, and they did review recommend. This is when they recommend approval at that point, but it did have the conscious of the adjacent property owner that they wanted to have make sure that it was good with it. So that's why the mayor addressed that adjacent property owner.
Make a motion that we approve.
Okay, motion by Councilman Labor to approve.
Second.
Second by Councilman Wade, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get together tomorrow.
And then it's
Okay.
5 foot from the
Fast.
that was 5 foot from the property line, it was approved.
Yeah, 5 foot
West side.
from the,
From the west.
we'll have a
west side.
survey and then 5 foot from the property line.
Pretty good, sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming in.
Yep.
For building.
Steve, yeah. You're up.
Carolyn, Mayor, council members. I have just a lot line adjustment from the honey house. I just want to separate it from the rest of the property on the adjacent to it. And so it makes it better, comes a time to get out of this business or whatever, I can sell the warehouse and just keep the property. So plan is only approve my plan, and so I'm asking for approval from you gentlemen.
Where the planning and zoning has approved this, the motion you're here with us, Steve, was removed.
Was it,
Do you have any
there wasn't a
questions?
condition on it.
Yeah, we didn't.
It was just-
Okay.
We approve.
Second.
We have a motion to approve by Councilman Laborman and a second by Councilman White. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I think you have that piece to sign?
If you get the mayor to get the sign. So
We get the report, and give me the.
I appreciate that.
As it was, the line went through your building on the north of your honey house, correct?
Well, it separates the honey house from the other two metal buildings that's behind it. And it's got a 10-foot access for the honey house. So anyway, here it is.
So there's two pieces to begin with. And
Yeah, see, it's right here. Here's the honey house. And then there's the other building. And then there's a 10-foot property line is right there, 10 feet from the warehouse. And this, the other 6 acres goes that way.
This dotted line is what I was questioning, is that?
Oh, I don't know what that's for. Jerry already did this, so I don't know what that line.
You're just dividing it.
Yeah, I must.
We used to be
I
I thought that dotted line was
An old line.
where the old line was, but
Yeah, my
original, it says right here, original property line being adjusted.
Okay, that's what it is.
That's my real estate.
Yeah, I'm not good.
I thought that off.
Yeah.
Makes sense not to have your building cut in half.
Thank you.
Okay, please sign.
I'll let you roll that back up. so-
Oh, yeah, don't be here, don't be here, have to make noise. Okay.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Next item is we have, now do we want to talk about the lot line adjustment first? We will have to talk about the lot line adjustment first, so Keith, you're up.
Okay. You want this?
Do we have a digital?
You know what? I do, except that while we've been here, I haven't been able to open any PDF files, or I have it right here, I promise. But, we're having technical difficulties.
I don't know if we have this.
I have one digital one, I think it's PDF files, so, but it's not.
It is in the, it should be in
But I can pull up the lot through the website and show you where the lot is.
Does Carolyn copy you on the email?
Yeah.
You might be able to bring it that. So which lot are we discussing? A or B?
It would be it's between A and B there.
Okay,
Where we
so,
want that.
all right.
You maybe got that one.
Yeah. So we've got it right here, we've got it right here. Technology is wonderful sometimes. You can get.
Any questions on that?
On that acreage.
So to split that.
Now, was it two original lots or is this?
No, it was one original lot, it was an acre, and it's being proposed to split.
Minor subdivision?
And so at that point, the split, it's currently zoned commercial. So being able to split it off at the current zoning, you know, the next item will be zoning. So I'm just talking about as what it stands today. The lot, being able to split it off, then they could utilize it for commercial. And they would split it as a half-acre lot, is that correct?
Yes.
It's about a half-acre lot. This particular item, planning and zoning, recommended for approval. And for the lot line adjustment, that was done. Then they can do that. The next item is where maybe some more discussion is, but a lot line adjustment, they didn't seem to have an issue with it. Would you add anything to that, Steve? So anyway, lot line adjustment didn't have a problem.
We agree with the lot line adjustment.
So
it's not a lot line adjustment,
Well,
it's a minor
it's
subdivision.
split one lot into two lots.
So usually we talk about minor subdivisions when there's 2 or 3 new lots created, and this is just one lot, so it's kind of split, so.
A lot split.
Definition.
It's a lot split, we're splitting one lot into two.
So.
And it is commercial right now,
Right now.
and the next move is to make it residential. I mean, like on the next.
That was the
zoning,
next agenda item proposed.
Could you bring this up on Google Earth so we can see exactly what we're talking about?
Pull up on that here. Everything I want on this.
There's been discussions about sewer and water for those. Is that,
Sewer is not very far away in the middle up there. There's the main line that comes in down IFA across, runs over in behind Ron, the house that Ron had. It's, Leanne.
Is it the log cabin there or was?
The big log cabin is the
Yeah.
one that was divided off, is what we're dividing off.
Oh, okay.
It was on the one half and the other half is in.
So which parcel
So
is
this
the
would
log
be the
cabin
log
on?
cabin
A or
that
B?
It's not A, it's on A. It's for that.
It actually shows on B, I think.
So this is the
I think
lot
that's
right
that
there.
one as well.
No, that's right.
That's right, okay.
Okay, so what do they have for utilities there?
City water, city sewer.
Okay.
The gas, we put the gas in up to the big house, so it's just right there to it too.
At that point, in order for this house to have sewer, it must cross multiple property lines to get to the current manhole. How it gets there, we only track from manholes, so we don't track an individual owner's lateral line. But if it's split, this is the manhole it'd have to come to, or we would have an extension from this manhole over, and that's probably what we would expect.
What about a clean out?
Cleanouts would be on the lateral, and that would be every.
There's one rod on it and, it's not this far.
Yeah, that you can't connect to somebody else's sewer line.
Really? No, this is drops in.
There is a
the main.
manhole.
The manhole right there, or should be, in this one. But this isn't the discussion yet.
And yes, because I want to actually cut to the chase on a lot of this stuff. Because what we're looking at is this is owned commercially. We're looking at the lot line split, and Keith and his wife are looking to build a home there, a residential home. And so that's why we're asking these questions. And so I want to throw it out there so that as we're discussing this, we understand exactly what we're discussing. And that way we can address, the issues or whatever and kind of get to the chase. So is everybody aware?
are you looking to build a personal one there, or is for yourselves and then sell the other lot, or is
No.
that?
Chip and his wife are gonna build that.
And you own the property currently?
Yes.
Yes.
And so the house that's already there on lot B
is,
That one was built way back.
so how old is it? Just,
It was built, we built it in about 10,
okay, so it's 8 years old.
when we came home from Florida in 9. It was there as a log house without anything except birds living.
I was gonna say, it started a lot sooner than that.
It started long before that. We.
Everybody knew it by the log hole, which is a log now.
But it's now started.
I wanted to do something with that for a long time.
So, and then you would want to sell the other lot as a residential?
No,
No.
not necessarily.
Mm.
There's that nice old 4-bedroom home.
So there's this house
So
here,
this is
and then
just-
this would be the new lot created.
It's
Oh,
got-
the house is
The
on,
house is sitting on the ones, on half of it,
So,
and we're
Dave-
dividing it, so you build a house on the other half.
okay, so that, there you're just creating
Yeah,
Just subdividing a lot.
So that house sits on the lot that you own?
Yes,
Right now,
I own both.
both.
and they're wanting to split the lot and create another lot.
Does a member of the family own that home?
We own both of them.
Are you renting that other one?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Got a granddaughter.
And is it the law that they have to have utility lines stubbed in for a lot to zone it residential, or?
Here's what comes into play in my understanding when you're dealing with a lot of that size and utilities. A septic system is almost not feasible. You'd have to actually get the permit first from Tri-County to see if they would even allow a septic system on that size of lot, and I don't think they will.
We weren't thinking.
Sewer's within 200 feet.
Yeah, and there's a requirement that you have to hook in city limits if it's within a certain distance anyway.
Right, and it's very doable. Because the last manhole sits on the fence line of the house south of the log house.
So my only concern with the whole, when I came to the knowledge of this, is just water and sewer hookups, making sure that was accounted for. And that was personally my only concern. I know there has been some mention of concern with the zoning in that area, which to me isn't as big of a concern. I have 24 acres of commercial property. I have a house on there that I rent, and that use of that property has not changed, and therefore it's taxed the same, and it's used the same, and Ron, you would know this as well as anyone, I guess. Steve, you probably could chime in too, but anyway, those are my main concerns, is just the utilities. Are there any other concerns?
With utilities,
Questions?
the city maintenance wise, obviously we want to be able to maintain any lines that are city owned. And we prefer any of that, whenever this happened, this line isn't maintained inside of a city roadway. And just as a city staff side, we would want to see it parallel in that 8 South, so that it could come over and be serviced, so that future services could be either tied there, water and sewer. So at some point, that would be a staff recommendation from future use and tying on. It's what we'd ask other developments to do, is to tie in. But
I have a question along with that, or with that. Now, it looks like you'd have access from the Moon Lake side, potentially. Is there a way that you could, or what, an easement, so that if you put a sewer line in there, it would be accessible?
with the sewer
Through the
line,
backyard, is what
In
I'm
the
saying.
existing.
There is, I went and drove on that little gravel road that goes back into Lynn's home there. I don't, it's probably not a right of way right now on anything.
Sewer line's there.
Is that where it is?
The sewer line, well, it's just south of where that road comes in. It's on the east side of the fence, but that is a city sewer line all the way over to that.
They're running clear from behind it. Leanne's house, clear over to IFA. And down the road, I guess it goes.
Can the sewer line make grade up? 8 there.
Like,
So the question is, can the sewer line make grade? Oh,
I have
what's the
the
depth,
grade is,
of the
I
sewer
don't
line?
know, on here.
it should, it's pretty, the lot's sitting up pretty high compared to where the sewer line is.
Right, that's that other man, it was about this tall down the line.
I think that line wouldn't be a problem. It's looking.
I'd have to look at what the elevation of the house was, but,
From what
it's
I'm
possible, we
hearing,
could at least look into it.
from what I'm hearing is there's, where that last dot is that there's actually one closer than that from.
Right
what
down
I'm
at the end of the line.
So
That's where the
closer to
last
Moon
man-
Lake than that one. Which makes it simpler to get to than that one.
It'd be behind the white brick home. That's Leanne's, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's to the east of her fence.
To the east of her fence, but south, right?
It's right,
into
the
that
manhole
hole.
sits right there.
So what type of, I guess the question that I would have is, what type of, is there any kind of an easement or an access to that line for maintenance and those types of things? And if we were to add to that, would that be something that we could put in there so that, does that make sense?
Wasn't that an easement behind?
Is there an
Phil
easement
Howe
currently
owns that
there
other
that
home.
allows for
Wasn't that an
maintenance?
easement behind that that had a ditch in it and they filled up the ditch? because we put
Well, we
it
had,
all
used to
in.
have the canal to come over and around there. And anyway,
Irrigation.
when Leanne moved in, it was so dangerous to get off of Highway 40. There was so many near accidents. These moms pulling in there that they would rather ask me if we could come in there. And I gave him the permission that
So that took
we
a lot
would
of
do
stress
that.
off the highway.
I didn't need anything, but I said, yes, do it.
I think that's a good decision for safety.
2007 to the early 2008 is when that line was put in.
Okay.
Um,
You would think that there would have
I
to be
was
some
not-
type of maintenance easement or something.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. They just brought it over there because in order to do that, they were trying to get as many hookups to justify the line.
Uh-huh.
And that's why it went to that point there.
Would it be an issue to get one deeded to the city if this were to be approved, if we could get an easement deeded to the city to where they could come in and have an way to access and do maintenance on?
Well, that,
I'm just throwing this out.
you'd have to access it through Leanne's driveway. The other one, the line goes through their backyard. So I don't know what the city, as far as what they did there. But when I lived there, I ran the line from the house over to the manhole. And it sits just on the east side of that fence line.
So it's not where that manhole is, where it's on the west side.
The old chicken coop,
Yeah.
and then the last manhole sits right there
Oh,
between the two homes on the fence
okay,
line.
so that's where I dropped it.
So, sorry, I'm asking 100 questions, but it's good to discuss and I get what our city manager is saying as far as tapping into the existing residential line that goes into that manhole, but can we have another separate line come in and feed into that manhole?
Yeah.
And then the city water is where?
Down Highway 40.
On the highway.
Okay. And you would just have to work out a way to get the another city water line.
Yeah. Got a trench and went up through there, and through my pipe in.
It's pretty complicated, Chip, you guys go there.
I hope you know we're trying to help you, but there are quite a few hurdles that we'll need to overcome.
So I've got a question, Mayor, and that's.
Yeah.
Keith, if the lot split occurs and the zoning stays commercial, do you still have a desire to split the lot?
Yes,
We want it split regardless right now.
because we may sell
But
the
we
one
would like
house and
to-
keep the other one. I mean, for them to have it, we have the one house and we have the property on the other one.
So I have another question, a follow-up question with that. If the property remains commercial, can you still build a residential home on a commercial piece of property? And you're shaking
No,
your head yes.
definitely.
And I'm thinking, in my mind, you can.
You can't.
You cannot.
You can't.
It used to be you could build a house in any of the zones recognizing commercially that they have priority, but you can't go and complain about the businesses.
Right.
So unless you guys have changed it, that's the way
You
it
can
is.
have a house if it zones over top of you and the zone changes while you have a house, it's permitted to maintain that house where it is. But inside of a commercial zone, a permitted use isn't, a house isn't a permitted use to build inside of a commercial. That's what creates the change of zoning here, but that's what they're requesting.
But you can get a conditional use.
It doesn't have a conditional use, it is a listed item as a conditional use. So otherwise, we would send them through conditional use. The commercial is tough that way, and that hasn't.
And across the street's an R1.
R1 is here. The R110 does come
So it
down.
wouldn't be a spot zone, it would be.
110 is just straight across.
Well, it's here,
the road.
it would have to,
Can't be
You can't-
R1.
it can't be R1 because it's not a large enough spot.
Mhm.
But the R110 comes down.
And you could-
Both of them have to be there.
Yeah.
The question is this what you would consider I mean, it's zoned to R110 right now. So, if you think that's what it will be billed as, and that's what we think, that's what it's currently zoned as, so spot zone specifically because of that zoning.
Looks like,
That's those are the two options. This one isn't really an option. So the R110 becomes your option if you choose to rezone.
Another thought, Sean, what's the zoning on this area here? In these, on State Street and stuff like that here?
It's a QR.
I think it's a PRO.
yeah, it should be residential.
Okay, now what's the difference between that and that out there? We're commercial, can we throw residential in the middle of that? Because that's what they've done here, they've come in and they threw an insurance outfit over here, and insurance up here. You know, what's the difference?
So PRO, the why you have a PRO is to be a buffer between your commercial areas and your residential areas. So it can allow both type of things, but it does limit that it can be heavy commercial, it can't be certain commercial, but it can be a limited type of commercial, professional, like insurance, those kind of things can be allowed.
So that would qualify for that.
Well,
Or we could-
one, it would be a spot zone, but the other thing is it's kind of so that used to be residential there, and then they zoned it residential, what is that? Our
Professional office.
professional office. And so it's kind of an evolution of sorts from residential to professional office, and then it may become commercial. And so that's kind of the evolution of the property. On yours though, what I look at, this is just me talking, not the mayor, just JR. No, I'm just kidding. So,
Better go stand at the podium.
yeah, if I look at this honestly, there's a house already on the commercial piece.
Yeah.
I don't see that either of those two lots being used for commercial for a good long time. I see no problem in zoning it to an R10. And it's consistent with that area. But that's my own personal feeling. As long as, my other concern was the utilities and making sure that there wasn't going to be a septic system or something like that. Well, and for me, that's Tri-County still, but I don't think they would allow that. So I don't see a problem with, as long as, except the easements, there's got to be a way for Roosevelt City to come in and maintain their line up to that manhole.
Okay.
We would love to have it in the street because we already have other problems when it's not. It's not, when it's not in an alleyway and when it's not in the street, the northeast is a prime example of that.
What's the cost, what would be the cost associated with?
If it's on the edge, and I don't know whether it is, but we would be running the pipe and a couple of manholes, down there. And I think it grades, we could check into that, make sure that it did. If it could work that way, that would be the preference, so that it could be there, so that it could be maintained long-term. The northeast is a prime example of our concern, of the staff's concern with it being through somebody else's backyard. In the northeast, those alleyways have disappeared. We have,
This is the northeast part of Roosevelt he's talking about.
sorry, yes.
There's no alleyways.
600 north, 500 north, 700 north.
On fence lines with no.
And the sewer line's in the backyard, and now we need to dig up that sewer line to replace it. And we're gonna tear out everybody's backyard and everybody's, stuff, and it's really become a big deal. And that's what our concern is, because things tend to get built on top of it. And for us to replace a line, now what should have been easy is becoming a monster of a challenge. And not that this one becomes that, I'm just giving, from the staff perspective, that's what we would prefer, is the sewer went to the street and we could extend it to the street.
This one is a lot different in that it's not 30 and 40 homes that we're talking about, but the key is having the right of way down in the Winterton area there established for some time. You decided not to be there and sell. I mean, these things happen. As we get older, we see lots of things change. And so we got to protect it for the future. I was kind of negative against it initially, and so I've gone down and looked a couple of times, and that for a one home, not much is going to happen there commercially. It could eventually, it could be one of those RPOs. I mean, they could be developed as that, but it is real critical that we keep the services for the city, that there's right of ways, especially sewers. And that's kind of down in my neighborhood down there. This is a big situation for our city, looking at it, because they need sewers replaced down there. And I mean, you're going right down their yards, tearing up to do it.
Yes.
Councilman White. I agree with Ryan about what he says about being ideal to be on the highway on 8 South. But there's already a line there. And so what benefit, I mean, if we put another line on there, that other line still would exist and we would still have the problem. And so adding one more home to that doesn't create any more of a problem than there already is. And so I wouldn't think it would be prudent for us to require somebody to run an additional sewer line for one house where there's already a line that creates a problem that we're saying we don't want to have.
The other thing is that it separates off. It says, okay, at some point, if we did have to fix what is currently there, there is now the correction of that going forward. So that instead of having another one added to the problem, we have a solution that then we can start to do that and solve that.
Let's look down the road a few years. Obviously, we have on Summerall Lane, we have a sewer line going through there now, correct? From
No.
Oh, it's 40.
No, yeah.
Summerall Lane has it.
Oh,
From 8 South down.
Okay. So that really, in that whole area, that stretch of road between those two is the only stretch we don't have sewer in that area now.
We don't have it up Summerall Lane, but you're correct. That is a gap.
I guess my thought is thinking of if we're gonna require the person building a home to install that infrastructure, I don't believe that's reasonable for us to do.
I do agree with that, but I do think we need a way to maintain that line if there's an issue.
Okay, now.
They'd be responsible on their own property.
Yeah,
Correct.
So what we have done to Councilman White's point of view is we have helped in providing some pipe to help to that extent so that they're not buying pipe for areas that isn't, and it is just really, we're extending it past basically this lot and going in front of it. And so if we provided or could provide the pipe, that may be a help to offset some of that concern you have, and we have done that for others.
What size is that sewer line there? And then Councilman White has it.
Looks like 8 inch. But it's based
main
on
line?
the best information I have.
Sewer.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
It should be.
You remember,
I think it's 8 inch.
Councilman White?
My thought would be there, you know, anyone who's traveling on that road knows that road goes up and down. There's gonna be a point of diminishing return on that sewer line going up there. And then it's gonna start to go back towards Summerall Lane. So does it make sense to put it in for one house there? I don't know, because then it starts to go back the other way. Where in fact, this sewer line, the problem is, as Councilman White has said, exists with the city's own infrastructure. This becomes a liability for the person who's putting it in, right? I mean, everyone wants to make sure they get that in the right way as they put it in. So I feel similar to that. I don't know in this situation that it's be prudent for us to require someone to put that sewer line in up to that point, because I don't have the grades to tell me this, but I would question whether that continues to flow that way. I think it starts to flow back to Summerall Lane once it gets over the peak.
And
By where
that
that
is,
home is.
and you're right, like, and you're on the peak or
So
Summerall Lane.
you're on the west side of the peak.
When the city put that line in, they came in the fall, tried to dig it with a track hole. They could not, they dynamited it, it didn't do any good. So they covered it back in, came in the next spring, and they had the big mow machine come in and cut that line all the way through because it's all ledge rock.
So,
So you're gonna maybe experience that same thing if you require them to go up the highway, you're gonna have the same thing. And personally, for one home, I think that you're asking something that's way out of somebody's league. I mean, there is service there. If the city doesn't have the right of way already established, shame on them. You can't penalize somebody for something that the city overlooked before. I understand Ryan's point of view that we need to have that. But it's there.
Yeah.
So I think that you guys are having a discussion about, it should have happened probably 15 years ago, not today.
Well, and I don't disagree. What I do think though, is if there's an opportunity to correct that mistake down the future, we should take every opportunity to do that. And I'm not saying to put in a new line either. I'm just saying to figure out one of two things, whether that line becomes the responsibility of those that live there, and I'm talking the main line, I'm not talking the residential line, becomes the responsibility to maintain of the resident or those that reside there, the residents there, or if it is the city's responsibility. Now, I would say if we could be granted an easement,
I
then.
don't know whether we don't have it. I don't have that.
Okay,
on this.
so we're talking about stuff that may not even apply.
We don't know whether that isn't already recorded, so.
But that would be my only concern, is just if we're in charge of
we're talking about,
the 8-inch main line, if we're in charge of maintaining the main line.
okay, that's it. And then
The
the other
city
one,
brought it to that point.
And so that means
So-
we're already responsible.
It's already-
Done that.
We did not go ask them. They
I
came and asked
can't
us.
even imagine them doing that without an easement, but I've heard of stranger things.
And if we have
Well, I don't
a
think
new
it's
line, they're gonna be responsible for the new line
It's
from
not.
their house as a lateral to the manhole. They're connecting from
Oh,
the,
absolutely.
so that, they need to have a right of way to protect them.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna be ours to maintain and do, so
No.
they need to
So
make sure they have a right of way to access.
Honestly, it doesn't change the circumstance we're in.
No, and you can drive your truck to that manhole as far as that goes.
Yeah.
Whether you have an easement or not, you can
As
drive.
long as Brian can get in there and clean that thing out,
Mhm.
I'm sure he'll be plenty happy.
Yeah.
So anyway,
We need to.
Need a motion on the lot split. I think that's what we were talking about.
let's do that one first.
We need to do
Do it.
a zone.
Make the motion that we approve that, we'll split the lot first.
So we have a motion to approve the lot split by Councilman Labrum and a second by Councilman White. All in favor? Baird, excuse me. Second and that.
I would.
I know I repeat that a lot, but Carolyn has asked me to because she can't hear everyone all the time. So she's,
It's good you do repeat that.
so Councilman Labrum, motion, Councilman Barrett, second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Next one. And I think we've had enough discussion to move right into this.
One item on it that hasn't come up, just to put it on record, that planning and zoning generally makes recommendations to the council in that. I would just make sure that the record would reflect that this is an appeal of planning and zoning because they didn't have enough votes to pass it. So it does not come with a recommendation. It failed there.
Yeah, and I think Steve, and I'm gonna go ahead, I'll let you speak. I know what you're gonna say, I think, but go for it.
So what happened at planning and zoning was we had 6 members at the meeting. We had 3 yeses and 3 abstain. The way I read the law, it did not fail, but it did not pass either. So there's no recommendation from planning and zoning one way or the other. Because they were abstained, then it becomes,
They didn't vote, no.
yeah.
Well,
They didn't vote no.
we need to let the council know, the planning and zoning commission, that an abstain vote is a no vote.
As far as the record is.
Correct. They need to know, they can't weasel out of it. I shouldn't say that, but they can't.
And so the point is that it comes without that recommendation.
And without a recommendation either way.
Generally would come with a recommendation to approve it. Anytime there isn't a recommendation, by default, not a recommendation.
And
So that when it comes with that one, and so when it doesn't come with the recommendation, then it comes to you as an appeal process rather than a approved process. So this is an appeal, not necessarily an approval. That said, the zone change request, because we're changing the zone,
We'll have to go through a public hearing,
would require
back here in planning and zoning.
Well, the planning zone has held their public hearing. So the city council, if they override the denial, they would have to hold a public hearing. So tonight isn't the approval of it.
The question is tonight is if we want to approve a public hearing to change the zone. And we should have a suggestion of what the zone would be changed to.
I move that we let it go to a public hearing with the zone, adjust to the, whatever that yellow zone is.
R10.
A second.
Here we have a motion by Councilman White and a second by Councilman Layton to move it to a public hearing to change the zone to an R1. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Sorry that took so long, but it was good that we discussed that.
Now
So
where
the
are
next
we at?
one,
Now you
You
have
have
to
to
You
go
don't
back.
know yet?
you have to go back to the.
Almost.
You're getting really close.
But they try to get out of that house. It's detrimental.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So, and this will take 2 weeks, so it's a 2-week process. Well, you have to advertise for 2 weeks for a zone change. And our next,
Did you take care of that?
We'll go to the next meeting on the 4th, so it would be in January's meeting.
Oh.
One of the things, though, is you notice tonight, the Wells came in, they wanted a lot of different things, and they just had they wanted one annex or one water connection, but they didn't want to annex in, and we wouldn't give it to them because we've set up standards to try to keep things more in order. This is a real individual circumstance you're going through too. And they had to go through that, and they did, to get it, they did an annex in. I mean, that's what they did finally. But I just, and this protects us for the future, hopefully, that people say, I'm glad that they went through these processes, looked at the future and how it's gonna happen.
the other thing is there's state statutes that dictate timing and what we have to do to make these changes. And there's no other hang up other than the red tape now that's written in the code that we have to follow. So,
The last
unfortunately,
detail is the zone change.
correct.
So in the next meeting, we hope, if that
So if we do
passes.
the same thing and three again,
It's
and
still-
three again, so we could still have to,
Now, what is from beyond the zoning one?
It goes into a public hearing, but the council doesn't have to necessarily agree with the public, right? Or do we, I mean, not that that's
Well,
the
the
right
public
thing
would
to
have-
do, but I'm just saying that, hey.
We don't have to show that.
Don't have to
You don't have to, that's
I
fine.
think the city councils expressed their feelings pretty well. And so,
And I think
there's always some that.
yeah, we'll need to sign that, because that has been approved. And the feeling of the planning and zoning, from what I've visited with them, is they had some second thoughts, a few of them after that had been done. So I don't know that we'll have much of a problem there, but we do have to follow that procedure. I'm not saying it's going to pass either.
Right.
Oh, come on.
Not guaranteeing that.
My crystal ball is fuzzy right now. Just try to get that.
How long we do it, try. As long as we're the same line and we can go to what we need.
It's not our goal to make you take this long, but it happens that way. I'm sorry.
We're gonna blame it on the planning and zoning commission for abstaining.
I would.
But there was other hiccups before that, the address had been wrong and you had to wait, so I realized that was frustrating. Sorry.
Not that you can really.
Mr. Mockley. Thanks for being with us tonight. We knew it was gonna be a long night. I hope you brought your pillow and blanket.
You did too, when she got out. Whatever your beverage is. Good to be with you. My main purpose tonight is just to update you on Councilman Barrett attended, City Manager Snow was at South. That's okay. But I just want to, I sent out things a little like, this feasibility I tried to send out, we had surveys, come in of what the expectations are. The public kind of been giving us back. We had our 2 public meetings and we tried to pass those notes along to you as well. I don't know, did you get the chance to see those things at all? Did they get to you?
The feasibility studies?
Feasibility
Yes.
study, the public
Yes,
meeting
I-
notes, all that. So in talking with the architect, he says, well, it seems like you're at the point where you need to decide where this thing's gonna go, because an architect can't really put it together unless you have a piece of land and have a budget to go on.
Feasibility studies.
I do, I sent them out.
They're in the email.
I was just wondering if you could, because they have images, and I don't know if that's what you're.
They
pulling out,
do,
but they have
and
images of-
it's my fault, Ryan, I was late, it's not Ryan's fault. So, but what I would say about this, that we told the public when we showed them these things, and what the architect constantly reaffirmed, is like, these are not the only 2 options. These were just to get an idea. It could look like this, or it could be this, and remodeling, maybe what they could cost, and certainly location is not decided. You told the public that no location's been picked. We've not talked with you about doing Central Park as the location, but anyway, some of the biggest, while that's coming up, maybe I can just answer questions.
Just from my read through that, if we're able to use the current location and maybe expand into the existing park area, most likely for cost of land is a much cheaper alternative than relocating to a whole different place. Did I read that correctly?
Well, that's what it seems like. Yeah, and I have my board meeting next week, that we'll be, discussing what they want to do officially moving forward. But I asked City Manager Snow, should I come tonight, or am I just, I don't want to waste your time. But if we thought maybe it'd be good to get a feel of what you're thinking, so that I can take that back to the board come next week, and have some decisions there. But,
Yes, I think the library being close to our swimming pool is an exceptional thing in the summer. And it brings a lot of people and draws close to I feel really strongly it needs to stay close right there, not in another area of our town where it's isolated or something, where it's so visible and people know where it is.
That's my personal opinion.
I'll agree with that.
I think there's no better location in our city for a library.
Right.
I did have a preference, and it wasn't, well, the cost, you know, I'm always one to try to be fiscally responsible. And the cost of the remodel and to add on to what we have was cheaper, but I also liked the location. It was less impact on the rest of the park, but it maintained, you know, that closeness to the library. And I preferred that one because of those two reasons. So,
Or which one?
it was the remodel and
Are
the addition.
people totally opposed to changing our old, well, when emergency responses? I mean, is that too historical than to build a whole new library in that area?
Yes.
We've had, when there was a potential for that, there was quite a bit of comment opposed, but I think that's up to the council whether you want to have that looked at. So there is a chance that a museum could be incorporated into that space. There is, I was thinking build a whole new library right there on the
Demolishing that one.
Yes. And we've had to take a lot of old buildings down to get to a point, and that we could establish something that has a lot of continuity with our rec center there and swimming center, aqua center. But that's just my thought. I know some people have public.
Yeah, yeah, you probably would, because we've heard comment, people who aren't really concerned about the current building, they're like, yeah, we would like to sell them to them down, but don't touch the corner, you know, because they feel that it is of historical significance. And I wouldn't say overwhelming, but certainly multiple comments have come in, please don't demolish the corner.
I've heard similar comments.
I have too, but then the ones that did that when I was on the school board about, remember the old rock building at the old junior high? And they, that we went through, we want to keep that for a museum and it's so historic, but nobody wanted to invest money in it or do anything to do it. And it really became more costly in the long run because they finally did. You just kind of have to, I mean, it is nice to have the old building, but I think it'd be a lot nicer to have a new modern library right there on the corner and look into the future. And that's my.
Is there a way to incorporate that in there? I guess I'm one who likes the nostalgia of that old building in Roosevelt, just because in Roosevelt there are very few of those left.
Well, that and the church across the streets, you're not the only two.
And
And Elridge's house right there on the three right there, the most historic.
And the nostalgic corner, I guess.
Yeah.
But I guess the question though, I'm sensitive to what you're saying, Councilman, is there does come a cost benefit point there. You know, I think it'd be beneficial to understand what is the cost to get that building where it needs to be. I don't know that anybody knows that right now.
One of the things that I thought of, and remember with that as well, is I'm kind of partial to keeping it in some way, but not without the public input. I think with
You gotta have that.
the taxpayers' money being spent for something like that, it should be something that they decide on, and that's how they want their taxpayer money to be spent. So I feel like if they buy into that and say, yes, we want to keep it, and we're willing to make that investment, I think then we absolve ourselves from.
But if we say we want it there, we gotta have the monetary presentation of remodeling and add on, or taking, clearing the corner and do what we could really have some good presentations. I just think we should look at that.
One thing I talked to Daniel about is that they can't afford to do it. So it would have to be a Roosevelt City project. Now, maybe we tag team with them while they
Build the whole library or?
Yeah, I wonder what aspect, as you're doing this with the architect, I wonder what additional cost would be while he's already doing it, to look at that building and to get some type of an estimate, just a rough estimate as to what that would cost to incorporate it with with the building and the new building now, maybe it's totally separate, but we utilize the construction and everybody that's there while this is being done to, you know, make it more economical to do something there. I wonder how much that
Might
would
be able
cost.
to add a breezeway or something access. There is or an addition on the back that could be taken off, I think.
Yeah.
And maybe it could be, are you talking about the library or
The old library, so
so
the
the
one by the
library
pool,
is our library in the corner?
the one I'm talking about, the one on the corner.
Okay.
I'm wondering if we could do a feasibility study or do some type of study with the current architect where he's already done a lot of the groundwork for this and just get a rough estimate as to what that would cost to get it up to standard. Because I think it wouldn't cost that much, and then we can make a presentation to the town, and then if they said, yes, we want this overwhelmingly, then that may be something we look at, and if nobody really cares that much, then we demolish it. Does that make sense? Sorry, we're kind of sidetracked.
So this is what I came to hear, so I appreciate it.
So I have this one up. This is the remodel option, puts a parking lot in the north and north of the current parking lot. Here is the current building and the remodel goes around it. So that was one. And like you said, these are just possibles, not. And at this point, this is what the remodel may look like. Again, possible, I think there's possibilities. And that's the same remodel from and the cost of the remodel.
It's gonna be the second design.
Oh, what's after second? So this is the second design, new one. We do have just so the council's aware, that hold another map here. There is basically there's our old water wells that are up north here. So we would want to build on top of those. And here's a sewer line now. Our GIS is only as good as what is here. I think it actually sits slightly different there. I don't think it actually is underneath the building. But there is a sewer line. So to go north and to the west is ideal if we're going to do anything because of the sewer line and because of the well. So the feasibility study where this is set, it would set over top of that and over top of the wells. So if we could have some utilization down here, I think there are some ways that Dan and I can work on the logistics of placement of the building if the council is good with the building. The other one is this demolishes the current library building. That building is owned by the city and so is the property. And so the question that may come is whether the city has another use for the current library structure. If that's the case, if it's not remodeled, I would say if it is remodeled, then it's the library. If it's not, that's another question that may be talked about. But I mean, we have some structural issues, but with slight movements, I think we could adjust to a new building if that were what we did there. So anyway, and then there's some diagrams there. I'm going a lot faster than you did, so I apologize.
Fine. You do it, you know.
Stop. So then cost-wise, I'll just pull over cost. Option one is a remodel. This is kind of the price range there, 2.2 million to 2.8. That doesn't include land. And so that is just construction of building. And option two is 2.9 million to 3.5 million built. Now there is a slight difference in square footage between the two. So there is a slight difference.
The square footage, you would match it.
The approximate total square footage would be 14,000 square feet. Thank you. So anyway, I don't know whether you have anything else to add to that. Or kind of give a.
No, I think that was very good. I was not aware of the wells. Ryan made me aware of that afterward, and if and it's been pointed out, that's the pavilion just to the right of the parking lot that separates it from the playground. So if you reserve the pavilion, you're cut off from the playground. Your children would have to walk across the new parking lot on the other side. They were all very valid points that city manager Snow brought up. And I think effectively shot down the idea that we should not extend that far north onto the block, whatever happens, because of the wells and the separation.
There's potential for the new building to go east and west. Go east and then.
You really want that building guy, don't you?
Well, I dealt with so many of them, and I like it. You could incorporate some of it to do there, but I mean, we're talking everything you go to do nowadays, everything is so modern, and you go into fix up these old buildings and do, I mean, what do you want, what's a library gonna represent? We're looking to be historical learning, but you're really making it look to the future. I think you could just really change the whole dynamics of our Central Park area there, but somehow we could do something there to keep that. But I've just seen people just keep saying that it's really important. And that rock building really taught me how important, and it was built by it was a lot more sacrifice, and it was just a real.
I think and for that's why it would be important to bring it to the public for consideration. And if they really, really overwhelmingly, and if they wanted it and they were willing to spend taxpayers' dollars to do that, I'd say let's let them do it. And if not, then I'm in agreement with you there.
Well, the building's really, it wouldn't be big enough for a library. You'd have to add on to it substantially.
What I think would be neat for that old building, if it were to stay, is something similar to what Vernal has and the other places has, is a more historic, so they keep their historical artifacts and those types of things in that area. And
yeah, we don't have that.
Yeah. So
we have an old fire truck that is parked somewhere hidden that nobody sees until it's parade day. But it looks great spot to put that, and I think they have an ambulance at the hospital that might match that same time frame. So anyway.
Just one quick question on that. With that cost of construction, I know this is high level information that the architects put together. What type of construction is proposed here? Is that steel? Is it CMU? Is it tilt up? What do these have?
I think if you go above the design pictures, you kind of get some of that info right there. Some of it.
Exterior.
This is on that new construction, remodels design one.
And you want me to go up to the other one to show you that? Can you read it, or you want me to read it? It's pretty small. Brick veneer, EIFS, standing seam roof. Mid-share? I don't know what that was. Siding, aluminum storefront and curtain wall, metal soffit and fixture.
That doesn't really matter. I just questioned that type of square footage for that price.
I would think Tisland would be a good alternative.
What?
Match the swimming pool.
I think it should be coordinated somehow there.
But I don't know what the price difference is.
I think it's valid, though. You don't want something like totally different from it. It should flow onto the block, I think,
exciting.
If you don't mind, if we look at the designs, just the bird's eye view down on the remodel.
Am I going the right way?
You're going perfect. That's perfect. Thank you. In the lower right, you see the bluer outline of the current building and what they're proposing there. Nothing is set in stone. I did ask him after we talked, that can more of that exterior wall be blown out so that we could, what I as a director don't favor is how closed off and segmented everything is in that remodel currently as shown. My staff is separated from the majority of the backside, and then the community room is connected, but Yeah, you have to kind of walk through a little bit more on that one. So if we could open that up and have the pillars have to be there to bear the weight. But I would love to see, we probably need to look, if we feel that we want to try to save that building, and it is your building, that we need to see, I would really say you need to revamp that remodel design and make it more open if we can. Can we switch down to number
Switch to the
two?
other one.
So number two, you kind of get a different one, and I have to admit, the public favored this design.
Favored an open style.
It's more open, you see the lower, right, is a larger community room holds 180 seated in that one. And it's large enough that we should be able to have a curtain wall to separate it into two event rooms simultaneously if needed, or you have a larger event. The bathrooms are there. I prefer that we can have a gate in that narrow neck there so that events can happen after regular library hours without having the entire library open as well. And I really do like the sight lines of this upper area where there's circulation with that rectangular desk, but in the middle you have this circle desk that really you can see what's going on with the study rooms off to the side, the possible teen area, the tech lab. As far as management of it, really favor that. And so what I want to see is can two become one? Because if we can take number two more and put it into one, possibly make on number one, really make that community room be what maybe the current library is more. And that's what I'm wondering. So if we're favoring that, then I can take that back to the board and say the city council seems to want it there, but they favor the remodel. Can we revamp the remodel? And maybe we need to pursue how does that old building get involved? Is there a breezeway? That's some of the stuff I'm just trying to figure out.
So a couple of questions that I have and just to kind of keep things moving a little bit.
Sorry.
But, oh no, you're fine. You're totally fine. Would be, first of all, do we need an approval for them to proceed in designing a building right there on that spot? I mean, is that what we're seeking tonight?
At this point, it's information.
Yes.
Okay.
Until they go for funding, when they go for funding, I don't think they want to be surprised. So if you're a no and find somewhere else, that would be good to tell them now.
Well, I think that's one of the things that needs to be established right now is that yes, proceed, you can utilize that.
I think you could give them, if you wanted to, that you said, hey, go ahead and use the space where you're at.
Are we all agreeable to that?
I am.
Okay. And the second thing would be with the old building where we own that, how is the new construction, even if we keep it there and to remodel that, how is that to work?
I would say that the library just give us the building because they're going to.
And that's what I was kind of thinking.
So after 30 years, the city becomes the owner, but they hold the note, similar to what we've done here at the Crossroads. We paid the note, but the county has owned it. We have those kind of relations. We can figure those kind of things. I'm confident we can figure those kind of things long term.
And then if it's torn down, do we get compensated for that? Where is that?
That's a good question.
Or is
We
that
probably haven't asked for any compensation, either on use of property or that. And if you really want the old library or the old library used, maybe that is the compensation for the use of the property. Maybe it is running a museum or running some of that. Maybe that's part of it. I don't know how you want to do any of those things. We've never had compensation.
With that. So I would say, me personally, I've looked at this several times. We've had many discussions. I really am in favor of updating that one way or the other. I think the positioning of it is crucial to maintain the park as a park as much as we possibly can. But working out those details, I really appreciate the work and effort that's gone in. And I feel like I know how excited you are. I'm excited about it.
I am, but I want to, everyone has I think we didn't have an Acer show up yet. But I think everyone just kind of wants a little different thing out of what we're expecting out of this. Our main purpose in showing the public these designs was to say, are we getting the major ideas in this? And then we'll put them together much firmer then. And everyone said, we like where it's headed, you know?
I like the process. I just have one comment. When I attended that meeting and, you know, tonight you brought it up, and I don't have a problem with the design. I like the design. However you guys do it, incorporating all those things that have been discussed. But one thing I'm curious about is, you know, the library, say you've had events there that brought in over 300 people, and we're designing a building to hold 150 people in one of those rooms.
Yeah.
Is there, I mean, is there what, like, is it legal to break fire code and put 300 people in 150 rooms?
I'll follow the recording, I'm not gonna answer that question. That's a question for the fire chief.
There's part of what I'm wondering, well, and you know, those are happen once in a while. Average is more like 150, which is what we're kind of gunning for. The biggest events are 300. And if we can spill out into the lobby, and, you know, we're thinking of having some of that shelving, especially in the middle area, beyond casters, so they can be moved out of the way so other things can occur and spill out of that.
You've got ways to handle bigger crowds if it does
That's what I'm
happen.
hoping.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, great.
it's a great question.
Eric, you had a comment?
Question with the,
State your full name.
sorry, Eric Larson. With the community room, 150, 180, is that seated or fire capacity? Because most of these events don't require seating. You can set up a few tables for the kids to go make their face masks or whatever. You can fit a lot more people in there if you don't have tables and chairs. So I don't know that.
So is
So
the
the
capacity for
150.
seating versus standing,
Right.
two different capacities?
I don't know fire codes, but that is one question I have. Seating versus.
I would assume that you have fire code, capacity that you're talking about. At that point, I would assume that that's what the architect's talking about, but that could be a very good question if that's different, so.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Can I ask one more question, throw out one more thought?
You missed the 15-minute contract. I'm just kidding.
If the library wants the library to stay on that block and the current building is too much of a hassle to deal with, is it a possibility to move it to a west corner where the ball field is, to move the ball field? Has anybody thought of that? I'm not suggesting that, it's just.
That was a
That's
suggestion in
consider.
some of the public meetings, I think, that I saw.
Come up and- We didn't throw that out as an idea.
There is always an interested party in all the things you do.
Yeah.
And that is girls softball, and that is where they play. We have had quite a bit of feedback as the swimming pool went farther into that area.
Can I make a comment on that now that we're on it? And then I know I'm trying not to take longer. As we were looking at that, in all honesty, those ball fields are very, they don't work very well there anymore. Does that make sense?
The small ones don't, the large one still functions. There.
Kind of. So my thought was, I know we put soccer fields down there and assisted the school district in putting big open fields next to their building. I think it might be something, and this would be for another meeting, but since it was brought up, might be beneficial to make that a soccer field, which would function perfectly for a couple of soccer fields and without any limitation on how far you hit the ball. And talk to the school district about putting some baseball fields or softball fields where they're actually big enough space to have an actual full-size field.
At Centennial, turning that into softball.
Having some fields down there that are actually full-size and they can use them, and then turn that into a soccer field. But that's just a thought. So
At that point, that might be, if it does move that way, I would ask that some funding be included in that project, so that we did put $30,000 in building field there.
no, absolutely.
Anyway,
So that could be
but that-
coordinated.
Open mind.
Any other questions or comments for Mr. Moffett?
So basically, we all agree we want them on that block.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a feel for preference of remodel versus new.
I don't really care as long as I like the position of the remodel, the location of the remodel. That's what it impacts the park the least.
I like the, new personally, but,
I think that's something we should really look strongly at, because I would too with the new library. Remodels can be heavy.
In as a situation.
no, just the.
Oh, just the layout, yeah. Yeah, I like the layout of the new building. I just don't like the positioning of the rest of the park.
I might just add one thing. I think conceptually it'd be nice too to see some conceptual drawings if that old building were to be demolished.
The old one?
Yeah, the old
Okay,
one,
yeah.
how that would fit into the corner, because it would change the total look of everything.
That's right.
You know, and right now, we're just looking at really one approach. We've established the one's not going to work, and we're looking at where it can be right now. Where we're in the exploratory phase, I would say let's look at 2 or 3. That's just what I would say. It doesn't cost much to draw things on paper right now. That's just a thought.
And maybe a couple other remodel options to this one. Maybe taking an open design like this, adding to the north of the current one, so you have a larger open area, maybe some other design ones. I can get with them and kind of talk if you like. So
Your $2 million budget's dwindling fast, spending it on architectural renderings.
Well, this is only 10,000. So we're okay on this. We're actually at 2.7.
It can be on graph paper if you'd like. Just
Yeah.
put it on graph paper. We'll get the idea.
It gave us a direction, and that's what we needed. So, Ivan, did you say something about that if we were to do that, possible compensation if the building has to come down? And did you mention that we build the building, but we turn it over after 30 years? What were you saying?
I think we talked about. I think we'll talk about things like that in the future. What we do and where things may turn out. I was throwing a wild fair idea. So don't hold on to that.
I wasn't trying to throw a wrench in the meter by bringing that up. It's just a question that will have to be addressed.
For sure.
I'm not partial one way or the other.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Thanks. Thank you. All right, we're gonna, Mike, is it okay if you hold off and let's get?
Yeah, I propose that to manager.
Okay.
As a, yes.
Great. We'll go with Lance Denver annexation. Is Lance? Anybody?
Actually, they're not presenting, I am,
You are. Carolyn, would you?
which you can do after him, because there's no one here.
Okay, that's okay. Then let's have tribe annexation presentation. Is there anybody here for that?
Me.
She's doing both of those.
You do both of those.
So what this is, part of the process is I'm presenting those two, because I have received petitions for
Yes.
annexation.
No, I
I'm
get it.
presenting it to you.
I just
You
was wondering
decide.
if they were here. Okay.
So you will then make a motion whether to let them know that you'll allow them to annex and proceed with the annexation.
We'll give the time to you really quickly. Let's have you present those to us.
That is my presentation.
That's it?
I've given you the,
Could we have all these presentations like that?
So there you go. Are you willing to?
I've given you
Are you
the,
willing to accept the petitions of Lance Denver and Del Tron? Yes.
but I want
If we need a motion.
a motion on it.
Okay, let's go, Lance Denver. Do we have a motion to approve? One motion.
Second.
Motion by Councilman Baird and second by Councilman Waite. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion passes. And the annexation presentation, for Del Tribe.
I'll move to allow that.
Okay. Motion by Councilman White,
Second that.
second by Councilman Baird. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you. We will then proceed with a 3-month process.
Sorry that took so long, Mike. Right, you're up.
What we've all been waiting for anxiously.
Hey, this is Dave.
Todd and I have been anxiously waiting for this all night long.
Well, I'll try to be quick, so I can second that. Basketball game in some things. Yeah, well, maybe the last quarter.
Maybe.
Is it on VTV?
I checked.
We can put it up on the screen. Sure.
It wouldn't download for me. My presentation will be really funny about it. You went down.
You need to keep this short.
Do they all have to hand out? I'm gonna start
Mike
with
has
the
promised to make this exciting, so sing, dance, whatever you do.
exciting because it's synonym for short. I'm gonna start with the 3-page handout. And I think the summary that I'll present should be adequate to help you understand the financial condition of the city. So the first one on top is the governmental funds. And it is, do you have that in PDF? Oh, okay, I won't be distracted anymore. So what this does is include the general fund of the community and the capital projects fund and the debt service fund. So it's all the funds except for water, sewer, and sanitation. Does that make sense? And so I just summarized information. So on the top row, it shows cash, which excludes loan escrows, which can kind of throw things off sometimes. If you go back, let's see, 8 years or 9 years, the cash available to the city was about 1.9 million. I'm in the 2011 column. And that's grown progressively over the years. It did drop in 2015. But in June 30, 2018, that's grown to about $4.9 million that's available to the city. And then I've compared that to the liabilities of the city, which are payables and the current portions of debt. And then there's also receivables available that are fairly constant. So the total payables of the city are about $771,000. So if you compare the current assets, which is the 5.8 million, so which is cash and receivables, against the liabilities, that leaves the city about $5.1 million to work with. And then I compared that to long-term debt and then to the annual operating expenses of the city, which exclude, well, just the annual operating expenses. So the assets of the city are about double of what the long-term debt is. And go to that graph on the bottom. I wanted to just give you a picture of what the financial strength of the city is and how it's progressed and then taken and then in the decline and then climbed back up. So you can see in 2015, the available assets compared to the long-term debt was about 3-to-1. And then you built the pool and that dropped to about 1.5, and it's climbed back up to 2.3. And so that kind of sums up, the general fund of the city. The one thing that this doesn't reflect is the current condition of the city's infrastructure. So it says it's doing financially well, but the road should be a pile of junk and could be falling way behind, and this would not reflect that. So don't think everything's rosy because I don't know that. Does that make sense?
Well, that's rosy on this.
So it looks good with
There's been a
dollars.
significant amount of portion of money in the last couple of years to improve our roads.
There And then that middle graph, or the top graph in the center, it's the available assets compared to the annual operating expenses. And this is also a sign of improving financial condition. The annual operating expenses, excluding capital outlay, in 2011, they were about just over 4 million. So I'm on that third row from the bottom. Annual operating expenses less capital outlay were about 4,021,000. Then they've gone to 4.4 million, 4.7, 4.9, 4.9, 4.9, just over 5. And then 2018, they inched up to 5.3 million. But you compare that to the assets available to the city to pay for those expenses. And in that line chart, you can see that also improving incrementally over the years. In 2011, it was about 44%, and now it's about 96%. So if you wanted, well, what does that mean? Well, it means you wouldn't have to collect sales tax or property taxes, and you can fund about 1 year's of operating expenses. That would be insane, but this gives you an example of how you're doing it. So,
Which is really nice.
I'd
like to have that.
Right. And the county is in a similar situation where they're financially able and they can explore those library projects that you just discussed, and they're really quite doable for the county. So that covers the general fund and the capital projects fund. Let's go to the second page of that. Okay, this is the water fund. It's a similar presentation.
So the assets available to the city, and this is excluding, so there's actually more cash in the water and sewer fund, but some of the cash is earmarked for debt reserve. So a lot of cash gets restricted because of bond covenants. So right now I'm only talking about cash that's available or unrestricted. So current assets available to the water fund at the end of the year were about 3.6 million, nearly $1.1 million greater than the prior year, about $700,000 greater than 2016. You can see in 2012 it was as low as 866,000, and it's grown to 3.6 million. Current liabilities were about 691,000. So it's, pardon me, so the assets are about 5 times what its current liabilities are. Total available assets are about 2.9 million if you subtract out those liabilities. And then the long-term debt is just under 2 million. And you can see that long-term debt, it's incrementally dropped over the years. So the water fund could pay off all its debt. If you look at that bottom graph, its available assets are about 148% of what its long-term debt is. So it's financially pretty stable.
The reason why we don't pay off the debt is that it's at 0%.
Yeah.
I was just going to say,
Yeah, no.
sorry.
Well,
interest rates are all zero, so.
You don't want to pay off a loan just so you have to run the CID bottle again. That isn't.
Well, and you don't want to pay off a loan because then you don't have matching funds to go to CID.
It is, as the condition of the water fund improves, it'll be increasingly more difficult at the CID to get grants and what.
So we should spend it now.
The last is the middle chart. It's available assets compared to operating expenses. This is also a valuable way to approach. Are we improving financially? Is our financial condition improving? And the available assets is about 112% of your annual operating expenses. And you can see there in 2015 to 16, it went down a bit, and then it's incrementally grown to probably the highest it's potentially ever been. So the water fund is doing quite well. And then in the sewer fund, identical presentation. The current assets available to the sewer fund were about 2.2 million. In the three previous years were about 1.4 million. The sewer fund was quite static as far as what it had to work with.
What was the change?
The sewer pond, water sales, and then I think a rate increase.
It was a rate increase, but then most of it comes from selling the water.
So approximately 450,000 was from selling sewer water. Well, treated sewer pond water. and then the other half of the increase was just operating cash surplus from rate increases and whatnot.
Now I know
So the rate increase amounted for about 150 of that.
There must have been other things that influenced it.
So a lot of it was
Ballard City.
What's that?
The
Ballard City agreement also affected it. So
about 450 was the sewer pond water sales, and then the rest was just operations. So available assets there, after you subtract out liabilities, was about 1.7, which was an improvement of about 600 grand. Now the sewer is a little bit different. Its long-term debt, it increased from 2.7 million to 3.8 million. And I'll go over that a little bit. So if you go to that bottom chart, its available assets compared to long-term debt went from about 44% to about 45%. So although the cash rebounded substantially, so did the debt. And so that ratio stayed pretty similar. But I'd say that the sewer fund is dramatically improved compared to what it was, 6 and 7 years ago.
it would become flat again once we don't have cells out of the south pond. It will become flat. So that is building our base and building our reserve, that our rates are sufficient to pay for the operating and maintenance costs of this place. But that does help us.
When we started in 2010, Aaron and I was spreading, it was being subsidized by the general all the time. And this is a huge move,
I remember that.
And we started
we had no accountability of producing water and how much we sold and how much we lost or anything. I just compliment all the good things that have happened with our sewer and water, because we really addressed it and focused on those things.
And for me, it wasn't 2010, it's 2012, we were still dealing with the same issue, and I know that there was talk about.
We were starting making moves that way.
Okay, let me just highlight just a few pages. Promise, just a few. Let's go to page 19.
Thanks for numbering the pages. That wasn't always the case.
Okay. 19 just highlights the three governmental funds that I've kind of already summarized. The general, the capital projects, and the debts, the debt service fund. You can see the revenues and the expenditures there. If you go about 2/3 down, there's excess or deficiency of revenues over expenditures. The general fund had a surplus. Its expenses were less than its revenues by about 1.4 million, so it had quite a surplus. And then it ended up transferring, then you go to the bottom third, it transferred nearly all of that over to the capital projects fund for long-term savings. And then the capital projects fund, it had revenues of about 103,000, expended nearly $1 million, so it had quite a deficit. It received transfers from the general fund to cover that, and it ended up on the third row from the bottom, about a surplus of 471,000. And then the debt service fund is kind of designed to break even, and it had a surplus of about 1,500 after operating transfers. So those three funds both improved significantly. All of the departments were within budget, and so I looked at that and so there wasn't any budget concerns. Any questions on that, Dan? Okay, Ryan, anything to add? Okay. Jump to page 23. This is just a brief summary of the water and sewer and sanitation funds, revenue and expenses. You can see if you go to the third row from the bottom, it's a business-like approach for reporting revenues and expenses. There was an increase in that position or a net income or a net surplus of nearly 1.8 million. In the sewer fund, it had a surplus of about 4 million. The reason those numbers, I should back up, those numbers are so high because of capital grants. So if you go up to the fifth row from the bottom, the water fund had a surplus of 121,000. It received a grant of 1.6 million, leaving a total net surplus of 1.8. The 121 is the number you probably really want to look at because the grant just gets spent. It's just out the door on whatever project it puts in the ground. The sewer had a surplus, net income of 761,000. It received 3.2 million in grants. I believe the majority of that was the South Cove sewer project. And then the 1.6 million, I didn't memorize all the projects, but it was a water line promise. And then the sanitation fund, it broke even by $23. So.
That's
K&K.
That's K&K, and then we take our administrative, which comes back to the fees that are inside of the water for the billing, so it offsets the billing cost. So that it's always going to be about break even.
I noticed the kettles were here tonight. I apparently outlasted them.
They were here for the noise ordinance.
Oh. Jump to page 24. This is a statement of cash flows for the water, sewer, and sanitation. What's important here is it's in 4 sections: operating, non-capital cash flow, capital and related cash flow, and then cash flow from investing. It's important that top category, those first 4 rows, finance everything else below it. For example, infrastructure improvements and loan payments. The water fund has a cash flow surplus of about 942,000. With that, it makes its loan payments. The loan payments with debt, principal and debt interest were about 115,000. So it was about not quite a 10-to-1 ratio. So it has more than adequate cash flow to make its loan payment. Then it uses the rest of its cash to make improvements in the system without borrowing. The sewer fund had a cash surplus of about $885,000. We talked already, the sewer pond water sales with about half of that. And then it also needs to make the loan payments and then make improvements without borrowing. The loan payments there during the year were about $230,000. And so it has adequate cash flow to make its loan payments. And then it had the South Cove grants and bond issuance and then capital outlay for those projects. Kind of blowing through that. Any questions on that?
And both water and sewer we talked about water, but both water and sewer funds, all of their loans are at 0%.
Yeah. Okay. That's drilling. Okay. Let's jump to page 37. So we're moving now. Page 37 and 38 are just kind of summaries of debt activity. On 37, it's debt activity for the governmental funds, which means all the funds excluding water and sewer. There was no additional loans, so there was no street bonds or any borrowings for that. The loans were paid down were about $202,000, so not quite 10%, with a total debt balance of about $2.4 million. And then the bottom of the page shows a 5-year schedule with 5-year groupings after that of what your debt service is expected to be. You're in the low $200,000 loan payments until about 2022. And then one of those notes gets paid off. And so debt service drops to about $145,000. Which one is that going to be? The top row, the $1 million one, it has its loan payment is about $102,000 a year, and in 3 years then it's paying. Too quick, I'm sorry. Just kind of, I read these for a living, so sometimes.
I'm just wondering about 2024 to 2028, what do we anticipate?
24 to 2028, well, if we divided that by 5, that's about 150. Probably about the same, probably in the 140 range. Because see, 24 to 28. There's a bond that's paid off, and there's a bond that's final payment of $10,000 is paid off in that 2028 year.
Mm-hmm.
And the other bonds are paid off in 2029, then 2035, and then 2037. So the largest note there for about 1.4 million, it's going to hang out for, for another 17 years.
2035, right?
And then there's a 2.5% interest. If you consider paying anything off, it would be that one, but.
And it doesn't start payment on it for 4 years, so we won't start payment on it for another 2 years, I believe. So we haven't even started making the payment because it got deferred for 4 years, so.
Also considering the retail makes about just under 2.5% too.
Yeah, we went 5 to 10 years earning next to nothing in the state treasurer's investment pool, and now we're above 2 finally, so thank goodness. Governments that are actually fiscally saving and growing can actually start to generate some investment earnings. Page 38 is debt activity for the water and sewer, and it's just combining in those two types. The only activity, well, there's a lot of activity, but there was 2 loans, both related to the South Cove project. So 1 million, just over 1.3 million was borrowed at 0%. No loan payments there. One starts in next year, or the year we're presently in, and then the other one starts in the following year. And then loan reductions were 339,000, leaving just over 6.1 million in debt. And there's a graph down below of what your payments are looking there around the $380,000 range. We talked about in our graph, is that doable for the water and sewer funds? It's more than doable. There's adequate cash flow to make those loan payments moving forward. Okay. The final, let's jump to page 64. My wife, if she could do her Sunday school lesson this fast. Ryan, are you familiar with this one?
I don't know what we're talking about.
Okay. We identified one issue when we tested for state compliance. I'm on the last page. I'll just go ahead and read it. We try to write it as concise as possible. The public hearing for the fiscal year in June 30, 2018 amended budget, so you would have had this in June 18, was not advertised in the local newspaper. It was advertised on your webpage and on the public meeting notice website, but there was some miscommunication and it didn't make it to the newspaper. And that same evening, you had your public hearing for the 2019 fiscal year in budget, and so it wasn't advertised either. But that would be a finding for next year.
We have contacted the state and asked about remediation from them and are waiting to hear their response of how they would like us to address it. But at this point, the paper did not publish it. And so it is a finding. So we'll accept that.
So you can undo the prior year budget, but the current budget that you're operating in, you may want to have, I'd wait to hear, but you may want to consider a public hearing to make your budget.
At this point, the finding would be whether we had there should be a finding.
Well, yeah, but you're operating without you could argue that without a public hearing, the budget you're operating under never happened.
Right. Public hearing was held, it just wasn't noticed.
Yeah, so wait to hear from them and.
We're waiting to hear, and once we hear and we will take action at that point, but we still haven't heard from them. We have contacted them right after we were made aware of that. We did contact them and we haven't heard. We still haven't heard them. Right.
I checked with them again because they said it wouldn't take them any longer than 30 days. They said it won't be 3 days, and 3 days until October 23rd. So I contacted them again. I still haven't heard.
If you let us know, that would be great.
But we were hoping that we'd known that before tonight, but they haven't responded back. We're still.
It's a privilege working with John and Ryan. They keep a really super big set of books. So,
I have a question just regarding the issue I brought up in the scoping meeting, beginning of this audit. The treasurer issue that we're still dealing with. Is that something that you have a recommendation for? Were you able to look into that a little bit?
well, we explored it as far as what concerns us, as far as segregation of duties. We don't so much concern ourselves with position titles as we do the fact that our duties being segregated properly, they've safeguarded the assets of the city. And between the mayor's involvement and the council's involvement, and then the separation of duties that protects John from stealing from you, we feel like those are adequate.
Okay.
But no,
so we do need to fix a title issue, but you don't have
Well, I
any
don't
concerns
know.
as far as accountability. We're good.
I believe so, yeah.
Good.
And I know Ryan showed me we went through a pretty lengthy checklist and then submitted it to state auditors, and they made some recommendations and there were some minor things that went through, so.
Okay. Well, hopefully we'll at some point address that the title issue.
Right. So. Now, I apologize, I'm not familiar enough with state government to understand some of the duties of what a recorder does, for example.
Yeah, we just have an issue with the title is all. I mean, separation of duties, I believe fully that we're there. We got to address the title issue just because it's not in compliance with the law, so.
Okay.
At some point we'll do that, I'm sure. It's up to the mayor to appoint somebody, so. Anyway. Okay.
My presentation is finished.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
And how long did you catch some of your boys' basketball games?
Are they reporting on?
If you would have told us earlier, we would have had it really,
I tried to, anyway, 2 minutes ago, Union was up by 10 points, starting the fourth quarter, and Tanner hasn't played at all. Okay, so.
Hustle down, huh?
Thank you.
Thanks again. Thanks, guys. Thanks. Let's look at our purchase orders. I saw those go by. Are there any questions or should?
I make a motion, we approve them.
That's a second motion.
Motion by Councilman Labor and second by Councilman White, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Reports from standing committees. Do you have anything for us?
I keep missing them. Ryan, I need to get notified more by you on the park, so I get back to the park meetings. I heard we have one. Some of my communication with the city is.
Is it through your email does not?
Me too. No,
That's the same issue.
I don't get it from the city, but I think it's been on my side, my phone, my data. I would like to comment on this financial report, and for Ryan and John and the work there, I think it's phenomenal. I mean, and we're definitely, the economy's a lot more stagnant we're seeing in the energy area, so I don't know that it will be as prolific in ways. In fact, when the growers are opening up a store in Texas, RBS, I don't think he's closing this one, but I mean, we're seeing so many moving to Oklahoma or Texas, and that we're kind of locals that supported our business a lot, or they're not having as much. So I just think that's something we need to be mindful of in the future too. I apologize for not being to them. I had missed it there.
Councilman White? Councilman Baird? Nothing. So with the Economic Development Committee, we'll have our first meeting next Tuesday at 12:30. There's two things that, and I do not let me forget to give you the NRA bag. It's this big with a book that's almost as big.
I've read Title 17 enough that I'm sure that it would be fine.
It's
No, I don't have to read too much more of that.
it's mostly pictures.
Or even better. Mayor.
I imagine we'll be holding it here.
I would give
And
my expectation.
so one thought is it's 12:30. Will we try to do some type of a lunch?
Yeah, I was
Provide
thinking
something like
that
that.
would be nice.
And maybe
12:30 next Tuesday.
one of the
12
things,
o'clock next Tuesday.
one thing we'll have to be careful of is not to have a quorum there of the council, but we would like, so now we're starting this transition and I haven't figured out how this is going to work. So we have one half of the puzzle put together. And I think the other one is the park side. I'd like to do something similar that we've done with the Economic Development Committee and bringing all the entities that we try to get to together in one setting and try to improve our efficiencies for not only council, but all the people participating in those things. And so the next one would be the Parks and Recreation Committee that would do something similar and to assign 2 councilmen to each committee to be there and observe. And so the question is, who do we assign to the Economic Development Committee? And then how quickly can we move on the Parks and Rec Committee and then get the council assigned to those? So, we had the Basin Arts Council, it's kind of petered out. And then we have, several other, UBIC that we attend and we're assigned to and those types of things. And so to bring all those together.
I think give yourself a little bit with the economic.
Okay.
Get it. Yeah, so you don't get so thinned out. Give it at least a quarter, see how it's working.
Okay.
Let's hit the other.
Do we have, Aaron, you've been with capital projects and infrastructure and those types of things. But we do have a representative from UB Tech there. But I don't think that would be much of a conflict. Is there anybody that has strong desire to serve on one or the other? Or
I would say, I like what Councilman Lane was saying. Meeting this week.
Yeah.
I would start with the committee that's there, explain the process to them, have that norming phase, a little conversation, let them kind of engage a little bit, and even if a couple members of the council aren't there for the first meeting, I don't know the matters.
Okay.
Myself,
Right.
that's just my feeling.
And the feedback we'll get back from Ryan and myself, to the council as well. So yeah, we'll let it marinate for a little while, and then we can make some assignments when everything's kind of starting to.
I think it'll be good to have continuity on how many city councilmen will be up for election next year. Are there 3 of us?
Yeah.
So the 2 that aren't up for election should be involved for sure. And so there's that continuity going forward. I would, that's something I'd recommend to you if that's,
It's a good recommendation.
All right, well, you guys got volunteered.
Hey, I'll come and observe.
I think it's wonderful if they're really involved. I know I won't be rerunning. I don't know about the others, but I've appreciated this opportunity to be here, but appreciate the youth and the vigor.
We appreciate you being here.
So that's been very good.
That's basically all I have tonight, I believe. I just wanted to kind of get some answers to those questions. The other thing is the nominations for the extra mile day. I felt it appropriate that we push that to where we can actually recognize them appropriately. And even though it's maybe not the month of, but still do it the right way. Are we able to get plaques?
We will order them. I think we have ordered them. So we're waiting to see if they'll arrive. We think they.
Okay.
Sort of fine.
Expedite. Just hit that easy button. Okay, that's all I have. Councilman Wayne.
Nothing to report tonight.
I've got nothing.
Okay.
I have a couple of things if you want,
You betcha.
and then we'll go from there.
I would give you a hard time.
Time limit, don't use the time limit.
You got 5 minutes. 7.
All right. Yeah. Okay, of course, a lot of my time has been spent on Title 17, so we've already talked about that. We should submit our grant for the tank project with our EDA, the 2 million gallon tank. That should be submitted by the end of the month with our consultants in DC. We have been working on the street lighting project.
1 second.
Which tank?
So
2 million gallon tank in Hayden.
Okay, so we have a 300,000 gallon currently.
And we're wanting enlarged.
Ours look 2 million.
And we're
Great.
looking for an EDA grant to be able to do that.
Great,
That was
great.
part of when we went back to Washington, that was one of the avenues that we found that we probably worked for that.
Another item is, what's that?
Let's protect our water.
Yes.
And be able to provide a better source of the, as far as we can, pressures and maintenance.
Speaking of water, really quickly, I talked to Mayor Watkins again. Okay. And he just wanted to be sure. And I told him to go back to the minutes. But we did vote to keep the 1,500 extra acre feet in San Wash, correct?
That's my understanding.
I just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yes. I indicated that to him, so.
Okay. Because I told him that it was, we brought it up, that it was agreed to keep it. And I told him to look at our minutes, but I just wanted to make sure so I heard water. So, okay, I'll communicate that with you.
And I have communicated, but if you re-communicate, that would be great, so.
Yeah.
Okay. We have been identifying, and we aren't complete with this project, but we have been identifying the lighting that we have in town. So we've been doing an audit. We'll go through just on its surface, the blue dots are metal poles, the red dots are wood poles, and the green dots are decorative lighting. So we haven't finished Highway 40 yet. So we have a few more to add there. But you will notice from this that kind of give you an idea of some spots. So on Lagoon Street, just by the bank, there's 2 here that are right on top of each other. One is on the wood pole and one is the decorative lights. We're paying for 2 lights, which we don't need. And 2 right here that are together. So we're identifying issues like this. And each dot, just so you know, gives me the pole number, if it's applicable, whether it's LED, who's inspected it, what the date inspected, and any other information. So That's why, as we've identified, we can see where the pole is at just about 450 south, 425 south. There isn't a light from there till you get in front of the school, which Councilman Fair is probably familiar with.
Both of those lights are on each side of my house, so I'm good.
So you're taken care of, which is all right. But beyond you, going to the south, so if we do the CDBG, which it sounded like we would start from the bottom, from 8 south, and work our way up. And that was what our goal would be there. So it may not get up to you if we don't get there, depending on how much money and whether it's possible. But it is an issue. The other issues we've noticed is you'll find that there is only one light at the cemetery. So we'll look to see if there's other lighting that is possible because it's dark. And along Highway 40, and we haven't finished all the way out here, but along Highway 40, you'll notice it is fairly dark as far as street lighting is concerned. And so we'll look into some of those things. So we're looking into different ones. We also are going to start an analysis similar to this on sidewalks, where we have gaps, where we have other things. So we're looking to fill in and improve both our infrastructure and have somewhere we have a lot of light, we probably don't need it, and there's some that is pretty sparse. So we're looking to kind of balance that out so that we have a safe city all the way around. So, so we're working on that one. Sidewalks come after this. What's that?
I said, the days are all of our safety.
I'm grateful because you're identifying areas that don't have much lighting, and those are areas that when I was passing out flyers, when,
You probably noticed it.
7 o'clock at night with my little girls, running from door to door, I was nervous for them because it's just, you couldn't see it all, so.
Right. And this will give us an inventory, and then after we do this, then we'll find out if we're actually paying for all the lights that we have, or more or less. We've turned a lot onto meters, and so we want to make sure that those that are on meter, we're not paying a pole fee for. And so anyway, we're looking to evaluate our costs along with safety, along with everything else. So anyway, kind of give you an idea. So again, sidewalk is coming. The other one we're looking at continuing along is the Cottonwood Creek. We do have a meeting that we're going to send out invitations, or have started to that process. We have an invitation on Monday the 3rd. Our National Park Service representative will be coming out, and we will send out invitations to all the property owners along there. So Councilman Fair should receive an invitation.
Will that be held here?
That will be held here.
6 o'clock, correct?
6 o'clock. This is primarily, we have some initial thoughts and designs and ideas. What we'd really like to do is take some of that and really get the ideas and the thoughts of those that are along that corridor and say, what is it that they would like to see? They want to see the walking on the side that they own or on the other side. Do they want a walking park? What things there is, and it will be a very open discussion. We don't, no offense, but we wouldn't want a quorum at that. We would hope that Councilman Baird would be there with he being in the property zone. But if there's other interest, we'd welcome that. But
I'll be there because I don't have anything.
if you don't have a vote, that'd be great. So at that point, we are looking to do that. They will come. Don't feel left out. She will still be here for our council meeting on the 4th, and would come and discuss those issues and some of what was addressed and talked about. So she'll be on the agenda for the 4th. And so if you missed that meeting, we'll cover some of those things and kind of give you some feedback of what was acquired on the 3rd. So if you can't make it, or if you don't make it, that's okay, because we have a special, we'll have a meeting time for you. So, yeah. So we're working on that one and have a few other ones. We do have potential for a closed session for a couple of items, one property item, one personal item. And then in that 5 minutes.
Thank you.
Great job.
Um,
Now, if you ask me a question, you can't count that.
Oh, no, we're not gonna ask any questions. What we're gonna do is I'm gonna ask, if anybody would entertain a motion to move into closed session for, personnel issues and a property issue.
I'll move.
And that's to go into closed session and then come.
I'll second.
A motion by Councilman Baird and a second by Councilman Labor. All in favor?
Aye.
Roll call on this. Councilman Labor.
Yay.
Councilman White.
Yay.
Councilman Baird. Yay. Councilman Wade. Yay. Councilman Burdick.
Yay.
All in favor, we'll go ahead and shut down.